Alright, I do believe we might be live. Alright, I hope you guys can hear me okay. This is a brand new streaming setup today. Let me turn this down just a little bit more, actually. Alright. I want to get involved in some longer streams, as I've been, speaking about on some of my, streams. Hey, what's happening, Connor? Alright. So today, we've got Ableton Live open, and hopefully we're going to not have a whole bunch of technical difficulties. Hopefully you guys can see the Ableton screen clearly, and hopefully you can hear my voice clearly. Alright, here just fine. Fantastic. I'm dealing with a brand new setup today, and I want to show you guys a little bit of what's happening behind the scenes here. This is a new MacBook Pro and a new audio interface connected to that MacBook Pro. And I've got my laptop here with an HDMI, my Mac here. I've got a Elgato HD60 coming out of the back of this, and we're routing that into OBS over here on the MacBook Pro. Unfortunately, the MacBook Pro doesn't seem to really like it when we get OBS going with an additional screen coming from an additional computer. And the fan on my MacBook Pro is going crazy town and is very loud, and the MacBook Pro is getting pretty warm, and the audio interface that's attached to it is getting a little bit warm. And apparently what happens when the MacBook gets warm is that it starts to drop frame rates when you are live streaming in OBS. So, my normal webcam that I'm using on these streams is I'm normally working with a Logitech Brio, but I've had problems with that webcam ever since day one with it, and it often has a problem where it drops frames. And it seems like we're dropping some frames now. Right now I'm talking to an iPhone 8 Plus running an app called iRuin. I don't know how to exactly pronounce it, but it turns the iPhone 8 Plus into a webcam that wirelessly is speaking to OBS inside of the MacBook. So we're hoping that connection holds up today. But literally this morning, while trying to get the Logitech Brio in the setup, I wasn't even able to get it functioning in any way that would be suitable for actually using it. So definitely having a lot of issue with that Logitech Brio. I tried to use the built-in webcam to this very, very expensive MacBook Pro. Unfortunately, I can't get there's no controls in the MacBook for the webcam inside of the MacBook. So I'm unable to get it to stop trying to autofocus and change and flicker as it starts to change the, it looks like we're losing some frame rates here. Okay, well, we're going to, I think my concern is, I think that as the MacBook continues to heat up, that it's going to continue to throttle its CPU and choke some of the frame rates that are coming out of OBS, which is certainly going to be a frustration, as this MacBook Pro was purchased exclusively for the point of live streaming with. So we're going to see how all of this goes today. And this is definitely just a test run, and I appreciate everyone hanging out in the chat. What we're going to do today is I want to record a groove that I have built, just a really basic techno groove that I have built in the Eurorack system. We're going to multi-track record that groove out using the 1010 Blue Box. And then I'm going to take the card with those tracks on it. We're going to put it into the back of the Mac. We're going to load those tracks into the Mac, and we're going to start producing and mixing that groove, hopefully using some of the Eventide desktop plugins. Now, why am I working with the Eventide plugins today? Because Eventide is currently having a 50% off sale on all of their iOS plugins, and they're also having quite a big sale on their desktop plugins. So I thought we would just have some fun and geek out with this stream and see what we can get going today. Okay. Just going to take a look at the chat. Yeah, not a good advert for MacBooks. With the price that I paid for this, you know, I'm a little bit more frustrated, sad, and angry than I appear on the stream right now. Let's just put it that way. Um, See, that's the thing, Fade Man. The M1 is absolutely a no-go. And here's the thing, guys. If you have a Mac and you're using OBS and you're streaming without your Mac heating up, that's great, and I'm happy for you. But unless you're trying to bring in a screen from an external device, like we're doing here, it's not the same tax on your CPU. And apparently, from the research that I've done, it's when we're bringing in that extra HDMI screen through OBS specifically from another computer that pushes the MacBook to the point of where it just starts. I mean, this is 64 gigs of RAM, the most powerful currently available MacBook Pro that there is. But I don't want to spend the whole session just bashing Apple and being frustrated. Hopefully, we're going to get some music made today. Hey, what's happening, Dom? What's happening, Scott? What's happening, Wall? All right. Thanks for tuning in, Lisa and Connor. All right, everyone. So this is going to be a super casual test stream today, as we see sort of how long the MacBook can hold out, and you know, if it gets too hot, that it just starts dropping frame rates, and how it keeps up with the video and the audio once we get started working inside of Ableton Live. Okay. So currently, I'm just going to move this camera. We don't have a separate camera for the room cam. It's just this main cam. So I'm going to go ahead and play the groove. This is just a really simple, basic starter kind of techno groove that I created in the Eurorack last night so that we would have some fun content to work with rather than just starting from scratch in Ableton with the Ableton plugins, you know, that everybody else is using. I figured we would go ahead and do it, you know, the Dean way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play this groove, and I'm going to turn the volume up on my mixer here. So this is going to get loud now. We're going to get into real audio levels. So here it comes, everyone. Now, if you could please let me know if that's too loud. The meter in OBS looks okay. Just let me know, guys. And what we're going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and record just a little bit of this groove out. What we're hearing there is the Desmodus Versio reverb just sort of breathing away on its own there. I'm going to hit record and play. No tracks enables for recording. Okay. So let's go ahead and enable these then. Fantastic. And let's see here, if I just hit record and play, that gets us recording in the blue box. And we're just going to be over on this side of the room for the first few minutes, and then we're going to be in Ableton for the rest of the stream, guys. Let's go ahead and record this out. I had some reverb on that clap sound from the Desmodus Versio reverb in the system. But now that I think about it, I think I'll just keep it dry, and we'll use some Eventide reverb on the desktop instead of using that original baked-in reverb that I had. Maybe like a good reason to get the black hole going today. Cool. Just want to get a little bit of variation on this bass line recorded. Yeah. And I want to get a little bit more of the bassline variation. Yeah. All right. Now I'm just going to press stop on the blue box. Looks like we recorded for about a minute, you know. We're not worrying so much about like trying to get long tracks today. We're just going to recreate the basic groove inside of Ableton, hopefully. That is the intention. So what we need to do is just, actually I think I need to save before I pull the card out. So let me go ahead and go to the project menu and get a save on real quick. So all I'm going to do is just pull the card out of the 1010 blue box now. And we're going to put that into the back of my Mac here and try to get these tracks, these individual multi-tracks. It, you know, records onto a tiny, you probably can't see that, you know, little smart media card here. And I'm going to plug that into a little bit larger of an adapter. Still probably can't see that there. And we're going to plug this into the back of my Mac. I really wish I had a third camera at this time that could maybe sort of be on this part of the room, you know, showing all of this stuff. Um, that's what the Logitech Brio was hopefully going to provide for us. But as it is now, we've just got the one camera and then Ableton. Okay. Hey, what's happening, Brian? Hey, what's happening, Russ? It's not. Okay, let's talk about this real quick because I knew there was going to be a lot of controversy in the chat for people who were like, well, I've got this and it works great for me. And that's great. And I'm happy if you've got something that's working great for you. What the deal is, guys, is I'm using OBS on this MacBook Pro and I'm bringing in the screen from my main Mac to this MacBook. If you're not streaming in OBS on a MacBook Pro and trying to bring in another screen from another computer into your stream, it's not the same. And I'm glad that you're having success. Let's move on. The external HDMI DOM is an Elgato HD 60S Plus, but from the research that I did online yesterday, it's anytime in OBS that you're trying to bring in any sort of an outside screen on the MacBook Pro in OBS, that kicks the fans up to like crazy town. Because it's heating up, and when it heats up, that's when you get the CPU starts throttling and you get frames dropped, which you can kind of see in the stream here with this cam. All right. Yeah, I did think about trying to do it all from one computer, but it's just not really my workflow that way. So this way, you know, it's a lot easier for me personally, and if it worked as expected and, you know, as expected, then we would be like golden right now. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Okay. Let me go ahead and switch over, and let's not worry too much about that part of the stream, because as long as the audio is coming through okay right now, then we are good to move forward. I'm assuming you guys can see Ableton now in the stream, and hopefully it is clear. If you can see Ableton and we can hear the audio, then we're just going to go ahead and keep moving forward. The first thing I need to do is just, let's see here. We just need to grab the card that we pulled out of the 1010 blue box here, and we're going to go into projects, and now I just need to remember which one that was. Not that one, but probably the one underneath it then. Fantastic. And there is our tracks. So I can grab all of these tracks, right? I can highlight these recordings, and I can drag these over to Ableton. And I can, you know, I have an empty audio track in the session here. If I press Command on my keyboard, it's going to allow me to drop all of these tracks into Ableton at the same time. Okay, and here we have, it's just a few tracks. These tracks don't even have anything on them. I had a few more tracks inside of the session originally, but I had some technical difficulties with that this morning as well, which is sort of the theme of the day, it seems, technical difficulties. But that's all right. We're just going to move forward and see if we can't do this. This is my first time ever being inside Ableton live in real time on a stream. So hopefully we're going to be able to get this going today. Okay. Let's see here. We're going to start with this. Oh, I guess there are a few more tracks up here. Fantastic. I'm going to start by just kind of dragging all these tracks over here to the right-hand side, and I'm going to recreate this groove one track at a time. Now, why am I doing that? Our groove is at 125 beats per minute, and we just, you know, hit record inside of the blue box, and then we started going. There's no like grid that we're aligned to per se, and that's what I need to do now, is I need to get all of these recordings actually aligned to the grid inside of Ableton. We're going to go ahead and start working with the kick drum first. I'm just going to go ahead and double click that, and I'm going to unwarp it because we're at the tempo that the recording is at. Now, if I warp it again, it sort of puts it, it knows per se. I'm not explaining that very well, and I apologize. This isn't a masterclass in warping today, though. As you can see, I'm just sort of zooming in closer and closer to this sample here. And if I go into whoops, sorry about that. And if I go into the bottom window here, I can actually zoom way in on this sound. Okay, this is the kick drum track. We can get right in on the beginning here, and I can maybe add a marker here, and I can right click on that marker, and I can go set 1 1 1 here, and then we can start getting this actually. Why is it not? What am I doing wrong there? Just going to verify that my tempo is in fact 125 beats per minute over on the sequencer here. Oh, it wasn't actually. It's 155 beats per minute, so not even close. Let's go ahead and move our tempo in Ableton to 155. What am I doing wrong here? That's not seeming to do what I wanted to do either. I'm going to unwarp that and then rewarp that. Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. Keep the clip's current timing. Okay, fantastic. And now we're starting to stretch the gig. Please forgive me as I'm going to be a little bit, loosey-goosey today because I'm really not used to doing Ableton in real life on a stream, and I appreciate your patience for that, guys. Okay, so here we go. We've got the kick drum here inside of Ableton, and what I'm going to do, I think, is just start building up a 4-bar loop from the recordings that we made. Let's see here. I want that kick turnaround at the end of this one, though. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. Let's go ahead and delete this and bring this over here, and then take this over here and delete that, and then delete the rest of this. I have kind of an odd way of working inside of Ableton as well, and I haven't really showed this or taught this in real time, so I'm going to need to find my feet here as well. We're going to go ahead and zoom in, though, at the end of this, and we'll see that it's a little bit off of the grid, so we're going to fix that. The first thing we're going to do is just basically get all of our tracks aligned really perfectly to the grid, and I'm going to zoom in here. There we go. I'm going to put a marker in here, and I'm going to grab the end of that sample, and I'm going to drag this out to the very end. I'm going to fade this out so that there's no clicks and pops at the end of that sample inside of Ableton, and I'm going to do the same thing with the very first downbeat. I'm going to click on that downbeat there and zoom in. I'm zooming in with just the plus and the minus keys on my keyboard here. Just going to put a tiny little bit of a fade in at the beginning of that sample, so there's no clicks either at the beginning or at the end. Now, if I click right in the middle of this sample, I can see that we're still, it's weird. I knew this was going to get me because I'm used to really working with my hands and like pointing at things on the screen because I'm used to teaching on the iPad and with hardware, and I can't really do that here. So we can see that this downbeat, this is the halfway marker here, is a little bit off. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this, and I'm going to put a marker there, and I'm going to move that back to the grid as well. I'm going to click the beginning of bar 4. I'm going to just kind of slide that over to the grid. I'm just getting everything as glued to the grid as we possibly can here, using Ableton's warp function. This allows us to really freely move the audio as we want to. I'm currently over here on the bottom left. I'm in the beats mode of warping, which is fantastic for drums, but they also have other modes of warping. If you're working with melodic content, that might be a little bit better. Let's go ahead and loop this by highlighting that piece of audio and hitting Control L to loop it. I'm going to I think bring all of our audio tracks down just in volume, the tiniest little bit before we get started. And I'm going to hold, Shift to highlight all of the tracks there, and then just bring all of these volumes down, maybe like 3 decibels, just to be on the safe side as we get started. All right, so now I'm going to press play, and we're going to hear how loud the volume is inside of Ableton. All right, fantastic. I really feel like we shouldn't be this fast, though. Was the groove really playing this fast inside of the Eurorack system here? I mean, because that's just really... Oh, I don't have the card in. Yeah, it was. Okay, no worries. I was trying to make something a little bit more chilled, but we'll just go with that technical weirdness. I was at 125, now we're at 155, so I guess we're going to make some upbeat stuff. I just want to make sure that this kick drum, you know, is glued to the beat here. I don't like the way that last one is. It's the downbeat of the first kick that's doing it. No? I think what we're going to do is grab that and then grab this kick, hold the Option key, and duplicate it. So there's a little bit more consistent sounding at the beginning. I'm going to fix that still. Why is that view? Let's get that follow view off. Where's that? Follow. Cool. Now it's not going to move as I'm working, so it's a little bit easier to... Do I need to... Boy, things always get a little bit weird when I'm working in real time, you know, whereas when you're working on your own, things always work as expected, right? Just bear with me and we'll get this kick dialed in. Doesn't really want to dial in, so we're not going to waste time on the live stream with that, and I'm just going to do this instead. I'm going to highlight the second half of that. We're going to zoom in to the end here and do a tiny fade out, and then we're just going to duplicate these two bars as well. So we've got the kick all the way. This is one of the things also. Now you guys are seeing in real time the actual struggle. You know, we recorded all these tracks. Everybody wants the same thing. We all just want to grab those tracks, drop them into your DAW, and then just start going. But it doesn't work that way. It just doesn't work that way. That's why I only recorded just a small groove out of the Eurorack. We are not trying to, like, you know, get 12 different multi-track, you know, 8-minute pieces of audio to like suddenly sync to the grid inside of Ableton when they were recorded, you know, with no grid. We're not trying to accomplish that per se. All right. Okay, so now we've got a really even kick loop, but I do want that turnaround at the end so we can kind of get a bump, bump, bump. So I'm going to just if you're not familiar with Ableton at all, and maybe this is the first time you're seeing somebody work inside of a DAW, the most important thing to keep in mind is that the audio here is really malleable. And what we're doing is non-destructive editing. I can grab this audio and I can, you know, pull it back and I can pull it out at any time. So even though even though we're moving it around and stuff, we're not damaging that original piece of audio is what I'm trying to get across. I can hit Command and D and duplicate the part that I had highlighted. I can now maybe bring this one down in volume the tiniest little bit so that it's more of a turnaround kick. Here we go. I see. What am I? I'm going to go ahead and grab all of that audio content now, and I'm going to hit Command and J and just consolidate that into one solid-looking piece of audio. I'm going to hit Command and R and just rename this kick over here on the side. So now we've got our kick drum happening. I'm going to hit, I can scroll between the two different panes inside of Ableton, the two different view modes. This is the arrangement screen, and if I hit Tab, we get into the session view, which has like our audio controls and sends over here as well. Let me just see what level we're getting on this kick drum. Looks like we're hitting at about -6 decibels. I want to bring that up a tiny bit more in volume, actually. So we're going to go ahead and just double click that to get the attributes window open, and I'm going to bring the volume up on that kick drum a little bit more. I like my kick drums to hit about -3 when I'm starting writing. I think that'll work pretty well for now. I also want to note that on the master bus, I have a a Fab Filter Pro Q3 so that I'm cutting off any frequencies, any really sub frequencies below 30 hertz, and I'm cutting off any really high frequency content but above about 21,000 hertz. So it's just a really gentle taming of the super subs and the super high frequencies. And then on the master bus after that, we have a limiter, which is going to help protect our ears, our headphones, and our speakers. All right. I haven't checked in with the chat for quite some time, so I apologize that. It's a chill 155. Yeah, sorry about that, guys. I was really hoping to work at 125 today, but rather than just, go back and start re-recording everything and just dragging this out forever and ever, I figured we'd just start working at this tempo and just go for it. Okay. Let's go ahead and zoom out here, and I'll bring in the next track, and we'll go ahead and get this in the mix, per se. We'll find out what it is and just get this in the mix. I'm going to drag it over into our 4-bar loop. Whoops. Command Z, rather. We'll fix that little glitch there. And I have a habit also of kind of doing a lot of zooming in and zooming out as I work. So if that's a little weird to watch, then I apologize for that. Ooh, Ed's project is at 200 BPM, so this is chill for you, Ed. All right. Just trying to figure out where this is supposed to go, kind of. What I'll do, I think, is play the groove on this slide real quick and figure out where that sound is, sort of in the beat. Let's see. Oh, it's on the downbeat, even easier. Dun, dun. So I can do that pretty simple here. All right. We're just going to sort of drag this in a little bit so we get it, about as close to it as we can, where it's supposed to be. And then I'm going to drag it over. I'm going to double click on it, right? And if I, there's a little, it's hard to explain, but there's a little part here on the screen where if you look at my cursor, it changes from the arrow into, into a little, whatever this is called, I'm sorry, but we can move the screen with it, the size tool. And then down here, if we highlight the cursor in this tiny little box down here, it turns into this magnifying glass where I can, click in and then, drag with the mouse and really get on, really zoom in on these samples. I can also just sort of click in this window and then use the plus and minus keys to zoom in and out as well. So here we have where the actual downbeat of that sound is. I'm going to go ahead and double click right here and add a warp marker. We're going to right click on that warp marker, and I'm going to set 1.1.1 here. Now I'm just going to grab everything at the end of that 4-bar loop and just delete it. Do a tiny little fade out at the end of this loop here and see if we're sticking to grid at all. We are not. So unwarp this and then rewarp it to our current. Yeah, there we go. We're going to need to be doing that as we go. The warping is sometimes a little bit strange, but when you wrap your mind around this sort of workflow, it gets a lot easier. The warping was really difficult for me to understand at the beginning. And typically, this is, for someone who hasn't worked in Ableton, this might not make a lot of sense. You just recorded stuff and everything was all synced together. Why can't we just drop it in and easily start, working with it? Because, that we weren't, there's no grid in the blue box that we were working with. We're just recording raw audio, and then we're just bringing that raw audio in and start arranging with it. All right. Now let's go ahead and bring in the next track. I think we're going to finally get to the bass here. Let's go ahead and mute that last track for now and bring this bass over. We're going to go ahead and do the same thing. We're going to unclick warp, and then we're going to re-click warp to make sure that we're warping at the tempo that we're actually working with and not warping at 125, which was the DAW's tempo when I imported that group of tracks. I hope that makes sense. And if it doesn't, don't worry. Just hang out, and we're just having fun today. This is just basically a test stream to see how well my new system is going and maybe to get an opportunity to play around in real time with some awesome Eventide plugins, which are on sale currently. So I figured this would be an awesome time to do that. Okay, so we're gonna unwarp it, then yeah, rewarp this bass. Do you want to keep the clip's current timing, which is its, original timing, which we recorded at 155 beats per minute. Now if I zoom into the very beginning of this bass here, we can find the downbeat here, and I can double click that to add that warp marker. I can set 1.1.1 here, and I can get rid of maybe everything past the 4-bar mark. We can zoom in with the plus key by just hitting, by touching where on the screen I want to zoom, then hitting the plus or the minus key to zoom out. And we can see what we've got here. Let me see what my bass line is over here. It doesn't start on the downbeat per se, so do I need to drag it one this way? Yep. But I want to turn the warping off on this entirely, I think. Where can I get a clean start? Can I get it here? I'm just trying to move this audio around so that it sort of slides in where I need it to be. I don't like the way that this is sounding. This is, what is this, track 3? I'm going to try to re-import that track. See, whoops. All right, track 3. Okay, we're at the correct tempo and everything. I'm just going to drag track 3 back in here. Okay, and that's the bass. Come on. Why won't this move? There we go. Cool. Oh, come on. Just work. Cool. I'm going to go ahead and drag this back over. Whoops. We're going to do a lot of zooming out here so I can really see what I'm doing with this bass. Cool. And, all right. We're going to do that same thing again. We're going to zoom into the very beginning of the sample. We're going to set that start point by clicking the marker there and saying start 1.1.1 here. I'm going to erase that past the loop there and zoom in just on the end of that bass line. Do a tiny fade out. Start hearing this in the mix, shall we? Does that go there? Yeah. I really like that last one is the thing. This one here. It seems to really be sticking where I want it to. I'm going to go ahead and just do a tiny fade out on the beginning of that 1 bar. We've already got one at the end. Now if I highlight that little clip there and I hold command, I can just kind of bring that, I don't need to hold command. I can just bring that over and then command D a few times to copy that out. Yeah, that's nice. Go ahead and take a look at the EQ on this bass. I have Ableton set, guys, so that whenever I load an audio track into Ableton, it puts my default FabFilter Pro Q3 on that track, and it also puts a utility plugin on that track, which allows me to keep the bass frequencies on every single track in Ableton mono, all the frequencies that are under 120 hertz here. So that means that all of my really sub-low frequencies are in mono when I produce inside of Ableton, and that helps the music translate a little bit better to different systems and club systems as well, and help you to mix a little bit more accurately. Go ahead and do that, make a little variation. Let's grab this last little section as well and hit Command and E to split it into its own section. I'm going to zoom in and just do a tiny little bit of a fade on those. Cool. And then I'm going to grab this last one here. I'm going to transpose this, I think. Yeah. Just to make a little bit of variation in that bass line. Cool. We're going to go ahead and grab this whole piece of audio now and hit Command and J to consolidate that into one solid piece of audio. I'm just going to hit Command and R. We're going to call this bass 1 for now. And see, this was like, what is this track exactly? Sort of like, let's call this weird hit for now. Oops, I'm spelling that wrong. Weird perk hit. All right, cool. And let's go ahead and get a save on at this time. We're going to go File, Save Live Set As. Let's see here. Bear with me for just 1 second. There we go. Cool. Let's call this YouTube Eventide thing. I spelled that wrong. Let's just fix that real quick. All right, fantastic. I'm definitely a chronic oversaver, and I encourage you all to be chronic oversavers as well. Cool. Let's go ahead and keep moving forward and bring in the next track and get that in the mix. Let's see what this one is. We're going to go ahead and bring this over to the left here. I think this is a fun way to start a groove as well. I mean, we could have just started in Ableton. I could have started by loading some of my own samples from packs or, you know, whatever. But this is the kind of thing, you know, that helps make your sound, you know, when you're starting from a point that not everybody else is starting from, per se. All right. Let's go ahead and see what is this, hats? Yeah, hats, cool. So this will probably be really easy to get synced up. We're just going to go ahead and start zooming in here. We're going to get rid of that. I don't know how to delete that right now. It doesn't matter. We're just going to right click on another one and set 1.1.1 here. We're going to go ahead and delete everything after the 4-bar loop. We're going to go ahead and zoom in just a little bit at the end of that loop and do a tiny little bit of a fade out. Now we're just going to get this stuff all synced up, making a little bit more, a few more warp markers here and putting those beats exactly on their beat per se. All right, we can maybe do one there as well. There are discrepancies in, you know, MIDI clock. There are discrepancies in milliseconds as I'm trimming things out. Like if I don't set the downbeat, you know, milliseconds correct. So being able to get in and just sort of set a few warp markers like I'm doing here, and then moving some of these beats to the grid, you know, really snapping them to the grid as you can see me doing, that really helps when I'm taking material that was recorded from an outside source to get it all stuck to the grid inside of Ableton. Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Scott. In fact, I want everybody to really pay attention to what Scott just said. Watching others use a piece of software that you have is a great way to learn because they may do something you may never have thought of. That's actually how I really stepped up my game inside of Ableton. Actually, was I bought like some full master length courses, production courses, where somebody would be making a track like in a particular genre from start to finish. And even though that's a lot of hours and sometimes boring, you know, just being a fly on the wall while somebody else is working, you know, the amount of stuff that I actually learned by watching somebody just go through that process, I mean, just immeasurable, and definitely valuable. Like more valuable per se than just watching somebody messing around on YouTube, for instance, because they were, you know, specifically going from start to finish. Was really, really, really fun. Okay, just making sure that my hi-hat is stuck to the grid the way I would like it to be. I'm going to go ahead and take a look at the EQ settings on this hi-hat real fast. And take off some low frequency content here. And make this plugin a little bit bigger as well so we can see better. Cool. If I highlight this frequency content here with the mouse just sort of freezes the window. I'm not sure I'm saying that well, but it gives me an option to just sort of grab peaks and sort of pull down if I need to do a little bit of taming. I'm going to bring the hi-hats down just a tiny bit in volume, I think. Take a look at what I'm sending out to you guys here. Trying to adjust the volume as we go. I hope you guys can hear okay, and I hope that I'm not distorting anything as we go. I'm trying to make it a little bit louder here. Alright. Just let me know if we are too loud or if your speakers start distorting or anything like that. Alright. Let's go ahead and bring in the next track over, you guys. It's this one here. Grab this. Looks like it's just more hi-hats. Alright. Maybe the clap baked in as well? Yeah. I didn't really want the clap baked in here, but that's alright. We'll work with that. Okay. We're going to just sort of pull the start of the sample rather, as close as we can get it to the actual start point. Go ahead and zoom in there, reset the warp. And then we're just going to start zooming into the beginning of that actual sample. I think maybe about there might be a good place to start the warping. And zoom out a little bit. Here's a really definitive one that I can kind of set on the grid there. And another one that I can kind of set there. I'm just looking for these sort of, you know, start points of the sounds and seeing if they're off a little bit from the grid. Then I can come in and I can just put a warp marker on just, you know, any of these that I want, and I can just slide the audio around non-destructively. Again, we're in the warp mode right now, which is called the Beats warp mode, which is really fantastic for warping drums to your grid. Not so awesome for melodics, and if we need to warp some melodics later, we might use a different algorithm for that. I think we're going to just edit the clap out of this for now, so it's not baked in with this hats track. I'm just going to bring this down so it's like 2 bars. Do a tiny little bit of a fade out on the end, and also zoom into that actual end of the sample now, and drag that off. Yeah, perfect. All right, we are getting there. Just continuing to get this aligned to the grid, you guys. Putting in a couple more warp markers there just to keep us really on the grid with the section of the sample that I have chosen to use. Now, if I just highlight that section of the sample and hit Control D, it's going to just copy that right over. And we should have a nice 4-bar in-sync hi-hat part, hopefully. Yeah. We're going to go ahead and take a look at the EQ here as well. We can full screen this, actually. We can see that there's, I'm trying to do what I do on the iPad and point to it, right? We can see that there's no low frequency content already in this sound, you know, down beneath about 400, which is really what we want for a hi-hat. But we can also see that there's a really extreme peak in that sound, like right here, like a needle type of peak. And we want to get rid of that. So we're going to, you know, just hover the mouse over the frequency content here so that it kind of freezes it like this. Then I can just go up here to that peak. It's at 11K, and I can just drag that down. Make that peak a little, make the bell curve a little bit thinner. Now if I highlight the audio again, we can see, I'm trying to point to it again, we can see that that isn't quite peaking up the way through the frequencies like it was a minute ago. I'm going to tame just a few of these other peaks. That one a little more. Alright. We're going to go with that for now. I think I'm going to bring this down in the mix as well. And because we have two, I'm going to save also by hitting Command and S. Because we have two different hi-hat parts, and right now all of these tracks are just mono tracks that we've recorded out of the Eurorack, we're going to go ahead and do a little bit of stereo separation on these two different hi-hat tracks. First thing I'm going to do is label the first one hats 1, and I'll label the second one hats 2. And I'm going to highlight these bars over here that we copied out, and I'm just going to hit Command and J and make that an even 4-bar section. I'm going to rename this one. This is hats 2. I'm going to rename this one over here hats 1. Whoops. Control Z to fix that. Rather this one, Command R, hats 1. Cool. Fantastic. Now I'm going to save again, Control S. All right. Got our automation up by hitting, if I hit on the keyboard here, if I just hit A, that's the shortcut to doing automation inside of Ableton. I'm not sure we're going to get into automation today, but that's why the screen looked a little bit different there for a minute, because I had accidentally hit the A button. Okay, let's go ahead and bring in the next track then, shall we? Let's just drag this one over. We're going to see what this one is, probably another percussion type of sound. Let's see. Oh, I see. What I did is I actually got the hats twice, and okay. So we can actually just delete this track entirely, and I'm gonna just recreate the clap by using a sample or something. Cool. So just like that, we now have 5 tracks here inside of Ableton. I'm gonna grab this weird percussion hit and drag that one down, and then I'm gonna relabel this over here, weird perk hit. If you guys can see here, I've labeled all the tracks on the left-hand side, and I've labeled all the tracks on the right-hand side as well. I'm not worrying about changing colors or doing anything like that, just getting everything labeled today. Let's go ahead and do a collect all and save. And what this does is it takes all of the sample content that you've got inside of your Ableton session, and it saves that inside of the folder that your session is in. So it gets everything all condensed into one spot. I'm going to go File, and we're going to go Collect All and Save. It's going to ask us, do you want to save like files from elsewhere, all the files from, factory packs, whatever you've got in your session. And I have it all checked. Yes, save everything. We go OK, and that just embeds all of those samples into the project so they can't maybe get lost on your hard drive. Yeah, Ableton is a bitch at first, and when you spend the time to get used to this workflow, you could do some really magic stuff. It's pretty much like learning, any DAW. You got to put in the hours. Hey, what's happening, Ted? Thanks for tuning in. Hey, Joshua. Yeah, that's the thing. Everything takes a lot of time. I don't really have any other hobbies, as you guys know. Electronic music, I've pretty much just devoted, my life to. Other than keeping my wife happy, this is pretty much the only thing that I'm doing with my time is, electronic music stuff. And even I don't have enough hours in the day to do all of the things that I would like to do. All right. Now that we've got these tracks in here, we can start adding stuff in on our own. We can start mixing and producing this. We can start adding in some effects from Eventide and having a blast. So let's do all of those things. If I, again, if I use the tab button, I can change back and forth between the arrangement view, where we can like arrange out a song, right? Arrangement view. And then the other view is called their session view. And you do a lot of stuff in this screen when you're performing live with Ableton Live, but we're not getting into that today. We're just going to go ahead and set up, I think, some effects sends that we can, I'm going to delete this, that we can send our sounds to. And I'm going to delete this, and I think I'll delete that as well. Now, I've got a reverb and a delay send set up inside of Ableton currently. And what I do is I remove on my sends, I remove any low frequency content from going through like a reverb or like a delay. So if we're sending, like, say for instance, a clap sound through a reverb and a delay, there are some frequencies in the clap that go down to about 100 hertz or even lower. And if you send all of those low frequencies through like your reverb, and you keep putting more and more tracks through your reverb that have some of those low frequencies, eventually the mix, in my opinion, to my ears, starts to sound a bit thick and a bit muddy. So I like to cut off the low frequency content before it even has a chance to enter my effects when I'm using effects sends inside of Ableton. So here we're just setting up two. We have a send A and a send B. I'm going to go ahead and change these, and we're going to make send A a delay send, and we're going to make send B a reverb. Come on now, Command Z to undo that, and Control R to rename this. This is a reverb. Okay, so now I've got a delay send and I've got a reverb send. So let's right off the jump grab the Eventide black hole reverb and put it on my reverb send so that I can send any track in the mix to this reverb. We're going to go to plugins, going to bring this over so I can see it. We're going to go to audio units. We're going to go down to Eventide. We're going to grab the black hole reverb, and we are going to drag and drop that over to the reverb send. Now, what it does is it's put that after the Pro Q3 in my reverb send. Again, here's my Pro Q3, and I've got the low frequency content being cut. I'm trying to use my hand, being cut off beneath about 500 hertz. So no low frequency content, no matter what. Even if I send the kick drum to this reverb, no low frequency content is going to go into this reverb. All right. Whoops. Let me show you what I mean there. So here's the kick drum, right? Let me solo the kick drum. And if I send this to the reverb, hear how it doesn't actually sound muddy? It just sounds like I've added like a top layer of high frequency wash over the reverb, over the kick drum. That's what I want in a reverb send. I don't want those low frequency. I know I'm kind of a broken record with that, but it really, really was a big game changer in my workflow when I realized that you could sculpt the reverb sound itself and not affect your actual sounds in the mix. Like, we're not removing the low frequency content from the kick drum. We're just making it so none of its low frequencies get to that reverb. But we're not going to put, reverb on the kick drum. I was just showing you an example there. What we are going to do, I think, is put some reverb on these hats, though. I also want to, I think, take out that little break at the end of the hats. That's not really doing it for me, per se. So maybe we'll just sort of grab these here. Do the tiniest little fade out at the end, and then grab those little 4 hits, go Command and D, and just sort of duplicate those over. This is the bonus about working with audio inside of Ableton, is I can grab any section I want. I can do anything with that. I can cut and paste and move and reverse and detune and pitch up and pitch down, and all of this is non-destructive. I can still get back to my original audio just like that. Let's save at this time, and let's add some reverb to these hats. Come on. There we go. Fantastic. So if we were to add a lot, this is just the default preset inside of the black hole reverb, So we could actually load something up to be a little more specific as to what type of reverb we want to work with today. Factory presets, like biggest reverb ever. I mean, speak it to me personally, right? We'll just maybe go with their black hole preset for now. Now, something else I want you to keep in mind is that if you're putting a reverb on a send, which I highly recommend, instead of putting like 6 reverbs on like any track itself that needs a reverb, I don't want to put an individual reverb on every single track. That's going to eat up my CPU and also keep the reverbs a little bit inconsistent sounding from each other. You want like as many sounds in your mixes to sit in the same acoustic space as you can. So to route multiple sounds through the same reverb is definitely a bonus. And what you want to do when you're using a reverb on a send and not just dropping it on the channel is make sure that the dry-wet mix is at 100% wet whenever you're using it as a send return. So we're going to now, you can hear that we can get quite a bit of reverb on it. We don't want that on the hats. We just want a little. I want to give them a little bit of a more interesting space to sit in than being just completely dry, But we're going to do that with both hats. We'll bring up the other reverb on the other hats so we can really hear it, and then just tame that, We just want a very subtle bit coming through here. Yeah. I'm going to put some on that percussion sound, but maybe quite a bit, right? So that when the percussion sound hits, between the hits, you still hear the reverb trailing out the entire time. I'm liking that. Let's take a look at the EQ on this percussion sound, shall we? There's FabFilter Pro Q3 on the percussion sound. Bring out some of these low frequencies. And we can see there's some pretty extreme peak resonances here. I'm going to tame some of those. Very subtly and very gently, just a few of these frequencies. I think that original one a little more still. Yeah, better. Come on now. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time working on that right now. Let's go ahead and save at this time. I like that when you stop and you can hear that reverb, you know, kind of still trailing out. That's when I know I've got, you know, enough reverb started. Let me get a sip of coffee here. And thanks for your patience, everyone. How's the stream keeping up? I know I'm a little bit maybe choppy. I think that might be just due to this particular, you know, iPad webcam app, but everything seems to be holding up okay so far. Is the level okay still as we start building more volume? Am I distorting or anything? If we start distorting or anything, just let me know. When would add gain to the send be appropriate? Well, I would say that the first thing you want to do is if you're not like hearing the enough of that effect, you definitely want to make sure that the effect itself is set to 100% mix. So 100% wet would be the first thing. And the second thing would be a lot of the plugins that you're going to be using, especially effects plugins, you know, are going to have some gain controls built right into those. So if you need it to be a little bit louder, you can change the input gain setting here, and we can also change the output gain setting here. But let's say that your plugin didn't have those controls, right, and you're just not hearing enough of the reverb coming back in. One of the things we could do is we can go to the default audio effects that are, I'm still trying to point, that are built into Ableton, right? And we can go down to the bottom and grab something like this utility plugin. We can grab that, and this has a gain knob right at the top of it where you can just boost the gain, and now you've got, you know, 6 extra decibels of gain coming back on that reverb to get it louder in the mix, or, you know, as loud as you need it to go. You could adjust that here using a utility and the gain. I hope that's helpful. No distortion here. Fantastic. All right. Let's keep going, you guys. I think it might be cool if we go ahead and add a delay in at this time. So let's go back into my regular plugins, and let's check out here these Eventide plugins. What do we got here? Let's try... I like the Ultra Tap delay because we can get some unexpected results out of that sometimes. I'm not exactly sure that's the sound I'm going for today, but I think we're going to give that a go. We're going to put this plugin on the delay send here. And again, I've got the FabFilter Pro Q3 happening before the delay. So any signal that I send into this send gets the low frequencies cut off of it before that sound goes into the Ultra Tap. We can just go ahead and load a preset here. Let's see, how about quarter note triplets? Let's try that to start us off with. I'm also going to make the dry wet mix 100% wet here. We're going to go ahead and play our groove. Whoops. We're going to go ahead and play our groove. And maybe what I'll do is just sort of solo this a weird percussion sound, and we'll see what this delay is doing on top of that there. We can start to hear a little bit of delay coming through here. Maybe we'll just scroll through some presets randomly and see if anything gives us like an attitude or a vibe, you know? Ooh. That's adding something unique that I wasn't really expecting, and I like that. But it's not adding what I wanted yet, but I like that. what we're going to do now, I think, is we're going to copy rather this Pro Q3. So we have one before that Ultra Tap and then another one after it. I'm going to bring up the one after it and I'm going to play that sound again. Yeah, it's looking all right. Just want to look at what frequencies are coming through there. I'm going to delete that second one. And we're going to go ahead and put like, how about a second Ultra Tap? Let's just Ultra Tap this out, shall we? Let's put an Ultra Tap into an Ultra Tap. But let's go over here, like into their factory presets, and we'll start here. And I'm just going to scroll randomly through these presets and see if anything starts to gel with what we've got in here already. Ooh, some freaky stuff happening with that one. Bringing the mix level down on this second one so we can kind of have it further sort of back in the mix. I'm going to bring this way down. I'm going to try that while bringing everything else back into the mix. Go ahead and save at this time by hitting Control and S. And I think what we'll do is go ahead and set up a little bit of sidechain compression happening on the bass line so that it has a little bit more, so that the kick drum rather has a little bit more space in the mix to sort of be the loudest thing in the mix. And how I like to get a really fast 4/4 sidechain pump happening is with a plugin from Devious Machines. It's called Duck. And if I just drop that on a track and press play, by default we get that pump happening, right, on like a 4/4. And we can tame this a lot and bring the amount way down so that we're not really hearing an extreme pump, but we're just sort of ducking the bass line every time the kick drum hits the tiniest little bit to give that kick drum a little bit more room to punch through the mix. I like the way that sounds. We're going to go ahead and leave it there. Put the utility after it in the chain. Taking a look at the levels. Are we coming through loud enough? Does the music need to be louder? Bringing some of these hi-hats back a little more so that we're giving some space in the mix for me to add some more sounds here. I'm going to save at this time. And one of the things I like to do, especially when I'm working on headphones, is to use some visualizers in the mix so that I can make sure that we're not, pushing too much low frequency content or too much high frequency content. And what we're going to do is we're going to go to plugins, we're going to go to Izotope, we're going to scroll down and we're going to grab the Tonal Balance Control 2 plugin. Those of you who might be watching my channel for some time are probably familiar with how we use this in the sessions already. But all I'm doing is I'm just using this as a reference point. It's not an EQ plugin, basically. It's just a visualizer that will let us know what the frequency content of our music is. This is what a frequency curve for what Izotope considers bass-heavy music. This is what the frequency curve should pretty much look like, in their opinion, of that type of music. And what we want to do is we basically want our music to fit in this, in this gray area here. And let's see how we're doing so far. Currently, we have a little bit too much bass frequencies, not really much at all in the way of mid frequencies, and strangely, not quite enough high frequencies yet. That's not a problem, and we can get all of those things looking quite a bit better. Stream sounds good, Dean. Hey, thanks, Dad. All right. What let's do is let's start bringing in some sort of a melodic element so that we can start filling in some of those mid frequencies that we're missing currently. And what let's do is make some of these tracks a little bit smaller to look at, giving us a little bit more room on the screen. I could just close some of the tracks that we don't want to worry about, but when I'm working, I find it a little bit easier personally if I just make them a little bit smaller and try to keep as many things open at the same time as we can. Let's go ahead and save again at this time. And I just want to verify the key we're working in. So let me go to, I'm pretty sure this is F minor. Yeah, F minor. All right, so what we're going to do to, I think, make this next step super easy but also creative is to start out by just using one of my samples. We're in the Chords sample bank for the Electron model samples, but I have just the raw waves here. And so let's just pick one of these samples that sounds kind of neat with our groove, and then we're going to use a fun technique to create a rhythm with that sample. So I'll scroll through the samples and I'll kind of listen for one that, you know, fits a little bit in vibe-wise to what we're working with here. I'm liking what that is. This is tiny little hit. I think that might work for what I want. That's F minor number 8. Okay, I want to remember that. What I want to do is I want to go, let's see if I can remember this now. I want to go to Max for Live, and I have a MIDI effect that I purchased for Ableton. Oh my goodness, am I in the right spot, and can I find it? Yes, I am, and yes, I can. Fantastic. What I'm looking for is I'm looking for this sequencer, and it's called Polypen. I'm going to just drag that onto a blank track inside of Ableton. And this is what that sequencer looks like. It's like a Max for Live sequencer from Izotope. And this is an awesome and interesting Euclidean sequencer. It has 8 different sequencers in it. We're only using just one today. And bear with me, and you'll see exactly what we're going to do here. I'm going to take the random velocity amount. I'm going to bring that up a little tiny bit. And we're going to put a sampler, instruments. We're going to put rather a simpler, I think, after this. Cool. After that, we're going to put the Fab Filter Pro Q3 so that I can EQ this sound. We're going to go and put it on Dean's default setting, and we're going to remove any frequencies below about 100 hertz right off the jump because we're trying to create like a melodic chord sound, and we don't want it necessarily to conflict with the bass. Okay, let's see here. So I can remember how to do all of this. We want to drag and drop that sample into the simpler. So I'm going to drag F minor 08 that we chose into the simpler. All right. And now the sequencer over here on the left is playing back our sample. I can control what note it plays back on. I'd like to play it back on its original note. Yeah, which is C3 here. And where I just need to remember, yeah, I can just randomize what the sequencer is triggering here. It's just going to pick random Euclidean patterns and create some really neat sort of techno-y sounding rhythms. And it's going to, you know, each time it triggers, we're going to trigger this sample. Here's what our sample looks like in the EQ. So I can take some of those low frequencies off the sample if we want to. You can also tame some of these weird high frequency peaks as well. And I can kind of raise up the mid frequency content of this, I think. Oh, this is going to be cool, you guys. All right. Now if I just hit randomize a few more times, might find a pattern that sounds really groovy, which would be the intention here. Ooh, that's it. I'm going to go ahead and go Command and T to create a brand new track. And now we're going to record what's happening on this sequencer sampler track into this track. All we're going to do is tell this new track, which is track 7, that I want to record the audio from track 6. So we take its input, and I tell it that the input should be received from track 6. Now if I hit the record button on that track, and the record button on the top of our mix, now we can see that I'm actually recording those chord hits into a new track. Cool. Control Z and get rid of that little downbeat. Now what we've got here is a 4-bar loop of those chord hits. I can go ahead and delete the track that we used to make that loop, which was the sequencer and the sampler that I had loaded the sound into. And now we're left with just an audio loop in the same format, you know, that we're working with the rest of our tracks. We can go ahead and Control R on that, and I can call this like Chord Stab 01. Cool. And I can do the same thing over here on the right-hand side, Chord Stab 01, right? We can maybe get a Control S, so we save our mix at this time. All right. Now this chord stab here, if I solo it, it's very dry sounding, you know, because there's no effects on it. Be really nice if it had some delay on it maybe. And maybe some of this reverb on it. Bring this sound up in the mix a little tiny bit so that I can further sculpt it a little more. Are we still live? I'm not seeing any comments for quite some time. It's no problem if you guys are bored. I just want to make sure if we're still live. Turn this EQ here to a 6 decibel per octave low pass, which is a high cut, you know, low pass, high cut. I'm gonna tame those high frequencies on the chord stab just a tiny bit. We're just tucking it back into the mix and just trying to find its space in the mix, you know. Try to give it some more delay and reverb. A little better. Now, it's not really occupying quite the same frequency spectrum that my brain wants to hear it in. We're going to fix that now by loading the FabFilter Saturn plugin. I have the Saturn 1 and the Saturn 2 plugin, but to be honest with you, I just keep kind of using the same preset from the original Saturn from FabFilter because it sort of just does what I need it to do. We're going to go ahead and load the second Saturn, though, Saturn 2, onto that track. I'm going to put the utility after the Saturn so that the utility is always the last thing in my, I'm trying to point again, is the last thing in my chain here so that it takes all of the bass frequencies on that channel below 120 hertz and makes them mono. Now we're going to go into the presets for FabFilter Saturn. We're going to go into the version 1 presets folder, to the best of, and to basic saturator. Now this sounds absolutely magic, and I know what it does. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the dry wet on it from 100 to way less so that I'm not tempted to fall in love with it at 100% dry wet and overuse it. Now you'll hear what I mean in just a second. All right. Just trying to give a little bit more frequency content to this chord stab. So we've done a little bit of harmonic saturation with the FabFilter here. I think I want to put another band in here real fast and just bring this up a touch. That I've got the frequencies on that chord stab doing a little bit more what I'm after, Just kind of tucking it down in the mix to allow room for more layers to be added still. All right. That's just a matter of taste, Ted. You can have as much or as little effect on these types of sounds as you want, you know? Go ahead and get some more effect on this chord stab as I continue kind of getting it into the mix. I want this chord stab that we're creating now to sort of be like not the lead chord stab is what I'm going for here, I think. I'm going to save at this time. And let's see. Let's take a look at our frequency spectrum on the tonal balance plugin. Alright, I think we're going to work on trying to tame a little bit of these low frequencies. How I do the mixing is I do everything kind of at the same time. The adding new tracks, the producing, the mixing, the sculpting. A lot of people like it helps their workflow to just go and go and go, and then do all these subtle things like way later. Like we'll fix it in the mix per se, but I find that type of workflow doesn't really work for me at all, and I need to sort of keep sculpting and polishing the frequencies in the mix as I'm going. I think what we might do is try to put a little gentle LFO on this chord stab. Yeah, cool. And we're going to use the auto filter plugin inside of Ableton for this. We've now got quite a bit of reverb in the background. And I just need to turn the amount of the LFO up on this and maybe bring the rate way down. If I turn it from an unsynced LFO to a tempo synced LFO with this little button here, we can control the speed of the LFO, and not like a really slow LFO. Like I don't want like a 1/8 notes or 16th notes just spinning. I want really slow movement here. So we're gonna sync the LFO to like 8 bars. So every 8 bars, it's doing its cycle, right? Very slow moving LFO. I'm going to turn the amount up a bit, and we're going to just sort of dial this to where we can actually hear it affecting our sound. A little more resonance. Unfortunately, we don't actually see the filter moving in Ableton. We just have to listen for it here. We might need to bring this down to get it to start moving. Yeah. Also going to change this to a different filter that allows me to add a tiny bit of drive to this sound. Yeah. Now we're starting to get where I want to go with this. We're starting to cut through the mix a little better now, but we still have room in the frequency spectrum to add more sounds on top of this. Hey, thanks very much, Connor. I appreciate that, because I'm kind of flying without a net here. Okay, let's save at this time and go ahead and add in a ride cymbal. And there's a couple of different ways that we could approach this. The easiest way actually might be just to see if I can grab like a ride loop from one of my sample packs, and we can just do that super quick here. Fantastic. This is the Velvet Carbon Techno sample pack. It's actually I was going to say it's at the same tempo we're working at, 125. But those of you who've been here since the beginning know we got thwarted into working with 155 beats per minute and just sort of went with it. That's fine. Let's see if any of these ride loops gel sort of with the vibe we've got going here. We're going to find a ride. Here's one. That's not what I want. Not have a bunch of ride loops in here? Come on now, here we go. Is this it? Ooh, that's pretty good. That's even better. So I'm just going to grab that sample. I'm going to just drop it in. And by default, Ableton is going to, warp that to the tempo we're working at. It was originally at 125 beats per minute, but it just, slots right into our groove here at 155. I'm going to put that track right above the hats and start tucking it into the mix where we want it to be, way down there. Let's take a look at the EQ of this ride cymbal, and we can see that it's just super dramatic and extreme, right? Way more high frequencies than we would want. Let's fix that. I'm gonna start tucking these back into the mix. Yeah, come here, you. I'm gonna do one more and spread that out a little. Just sort of tucking this ride cymbal back into the mix now. Just gonna relabel this ride and this here ride. Tuck it back into the mix a little more. And I think what we'll do is put the tiniest little bit of the devious duck plugin on it, so we can get the tiny, I'm talking tiny, little bit of where when the kick drum hits, this track will duck the tiniest bit. And so I'm just going to copy the current duck plugin that we have going, and I'm going to paste that over here on this track. I'm going to make sure I put the utility on the far end of that, so that the utility is always the last thing in the track, unless I want a limiter on the track, and then that will be the last thing on the Oh, absolutely. FabFilter Pro Q3 is basically the industry standard, reverb plugin. Excuse me, EQ plugin. I don't know what just happened with that brain fart there. Let's get this started up and I'll show you. Okay. You can't do what I'm doing here with the Ableton plugin. Here I am looking at the frequencies, and if I hover the mouse over them, those frequencies freeze. The FabFilter Pro Q plugin tells me some frequencies that it thinks it might be, a little bit problem in the mix. But what I could do is, if I want to, now, EQ some of these, I can just grab that section of this frozen graphic, and I can start putting in my EQ curves as needed. So it has this really nice visual element that you can do, and I can literally just start grabbing anywhere I want and making points and just doing anything I want. The built-in EQ in Ableton doesn't work at all like this. That's not to say that you can't get music made with something like this. Of course you can. What you need to get music made is only, what you need to get music made for your personal workflow. This is what I do for a living, is electronic music, and I really need a solid EQ that I can use quickly, easily, and in the exact way that I just showed. And so that's why I use that over the Ableton plugins. You can absolutely get fantastic music made using only the Ableton stock plugins, and you certainly don't need to buy third-party plugins. That's just up to you. We're using the Eventide Black Hole Reverb today, and we're also using the Eventide Ultra Tap delay. That's not to say that the reverb and delay inside of Ableton aren't usable. We're just having fun today using other tools. Let's go ahead and save before we continue at this time. So we added that ride, and I put the duck on the ride. Let's solo the ride. Here immediately we can hear a little bit of that ducking. If I take that off and put it on, it's very subtle, and I'm going to make it even more subtle. I don't want to really even hear it in the mix. It's just there, the tiniest little bit, to duck this sound out of the way when the kick drum hits, because we want the kick drum to be the loudest thing in our mix. We're going to do, I think, that exact same thing and copy the duck again. Copy. And paste it onto this chord stab and see what happens there. Now when the chord stab hits at the same exact time as the kick drum, that duck is going to duck it out of the way just a little bit. Again, helping the kick drum to be the most focal point of our mix here. That's the goal anyhow. take a look at the tonal balance plugin again, which is on our master. Now we're starting to look a lot more like what we want to be looking at. Our low frequency is starting to even out a little bit with the rest of the frequency content of our mix. And our high frequency content over here is looking a lot better. We've left this space over here specifically open so that we can now fill that in with yet another chord stab or a chord pad or some sort of melodic element that will help us fill in this part of the frequency spectrum. What I think we'll do is I think we'll load like a virtual instrument here and see if we can't get like a nice pad to work with or sample. I don't really have anything in mind as to where I'm going or what I'm going to load, so bear with me for just a moment and we will figure out. Sometimes, you know, I get a little bit so into the technical aspect of the stream that suddenly trying to be creative in real time is almost like a shock, right? It's like, oh, wait, what am I doing again? So let's just do this. Let's load Native Instruments Complete Control. I have Native Instruments Complete installed here, and that's just a slew of instruments and presets and effects from Native Instruments. And maybe we can scroll through something here and try to find some sort of a sound that we can add to our groove here. I'm going to bring the volume down just a little bit by default. And I'm also going to load the FabFilter Pro Q3 onto this track by default. FabFilter Pro Q3. I'm going to put on my default setting, and I'm just going to take away any low frequency content beneath about 100 hertz right off the jump. Because whatever we add, it's not going to be something that we're going to want low frequency content coming from, because we already have that with our kick and our bass. Now what we could do is I can pick like a specific instrument in this pack to scroll through, or I can literally just, you know, go for a type of sound. I'm going to just select synth pad and sort of see what starts happening here. Cool. Boy, I like fifth sounds, and that's a pretty neat thing. I'm going to go ahead and just double click this and load it up and see what happens here. I've got a little tiny Novation Launch Key Mini out today, so that I can, you know, use this if we need to play any sort of melodics or whatever. And here we can absolutely use that. It's probably way not even close to something that we can use, but it sounded unique, so I thought we'd load it and see what's up. Let's see what happens here. Yeah, not even close, Dean. Okay, no worries. Let's not waste a lot of time on there. Ooh, I do love those fifths. So let's go ahead and load this up. What the Complete Control is, guys, that I'm using here, is it's just a browser plugin that literally allows us to scroll through the presets of all of the included plugins that come in Native Instruments Complete. So I can say, for instance, here I've selected SynthPad, and then we just kind of preview a few sounds. If something sounds interesting, we load that up, and it loads the actual instrument that's making that sound, which in this case is the Arturia DX7 emulation. Too low down there, but up there is pretty nice. I'm not sure that's going to go with the vibe we've got going, because we're at such a kind of a fast, aggressive tempo today. And in fact, I think I just might have figured out where we should go for a sound. But let's see what happens. Yeah, this isn't even close. It's not the right kind of techno, because we're not really in the chilled, you know, vibe right now. We're more in the, you know, let's go 155 BPM vibe. So what let's do then, we have a lot of different options here, you know. We could work with samples, but a lot of times, you know, the benefit of working inside of Ableton is that we can use, you know, Ableton, you know, desktop plugins and whatnot. So we're going to go ahead and load the Avenger plugin from Vengeance. I have a few of their expansion banks installed, and in fact, I made one of these expansion banks myself. I did the Psy expansion bank for the Avenger synth maybe 4 or 5 years ago. At that time, it was the biggest sound bank for this synth to date, and that's available through Vengeance. That was like 2 months of two of the longest months of my life working on that one, rather. But there's a techno expansion pack here. Lots of cool arpeggios that are just sort of built into these presets. And maybe we might find something here that might gel with what we've created. I love just kind of scrolling through presets, just seeing if you can just sort of find something that slots in to something you're already working on. As a sound designer, that might, shock a lot of people that I really just love to browse other people's presets, but I consider that exactly the same as collabing with another artist. And we all like to collab with other artists, right? To get someone else's, view or take or opinion in on your music. So the way I look at it, if you're using someone else's presets, all you're doing is collabing with that preset designer. And I like to collab with a lot of different people, if you get my drift. Let's start scrolling through some presets here and see if anything kind of slots in or gives us a happy little accident. I don't want to say accident because I'm doing this on purpose, but you know what I mean. Whoa! That kind of works. Not really what I'm looking for, but just gonna keep scrolling, What does that sound like if we take it up an octave? No, not quite right. Boy, I like those backwards parts of it though. Yeah, forget it. Those are nice. Let's sample those out. It's probably getting loud as I'm talking over it here. I'm going to add a new track at this time, and we're just going to record this out so that I can chop little sections out of the audio. We're going to tell this new track that it should record from Avenger. And I'm going to just hit record on this track, and I'm going to just hit record in our section. And we're just recording this into a new track here. I got what I want. If we hit Command Z, we get rid of that little overage that we recorded. And I'm just going to turn off Avenger for now, is what I'm trying to say. And we're just going to take a look at this track here. I can literally see where there's these cool backwards sections, and I'm going to just sort of highlight, here's one here where you can kind of see it fading in. That's awesome. And here, it's sort of got a downbeat, but if I just fade that in, I think we can get another nice little reversey riser type of effect there. Oh, nice. Okay, what let's do is take a look at the EQ on this new track. Cut off some of these low frequencies that we don't need to be there. Everything else looks fine. Let's give this a name. Let's call this track Backwards Riser Chords. Maybe pull this out a little bit more so we can see that there. And let's just relabel this and call this Riser 2 and call this one over here Riser 1. All right, and let's save at this time. Let me check in with the chat real fast, see if I'm missing anything. A midweek stream. Yeah, we're going for it. This is a test stream today. I'm using a brand new setup here. In fact, let me just, for those of you who might be tuning in late, let me just give you a little show what's going on here behind the scenes. We've got my Mac here, and I got a little keyboard controller. But over on this side, I've added a new MacBook Pro, hopefully to be my streaming computer. And I'm taking the screen here out of Ableton through the HDMI Apple adapter. We're running that into the Elgato HD S60 Plus there, and running that into this MacBook so that I can capture this screen to stream in OBS. Got a new audio interface back here for the laptop, so we're getting audio. And the camera in my hand is just an iPhone 8 Plus that I'm using an app called iRuin. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. I don't think it's Ruin, but it's iRuin webcam or something, and it turns your iPhone into a webcam. So we're we're just kind of scrolling around today, finding some new sounds to add to this groove. And we've just found a couple of these little melodic riser chops that are kind of fun that I think we can get some use out of actually here for sure. What let's do at this time is highlight our whole groove, our whole 4 bars, and hit Command and D to duplicate that so we can actually have an 8-bar loop at this time. That's given us a couple extra risers that I don't want, so I'm going to delete that one, and then I'm going to delete this one. Now I can put that first one at the end of 4 bars and that second one at the end of the next 4 bars, but that's still probably going to be too much riser activity. So we're going to grab this full 8 bars here, and we're going to Command and D, whoops, we're going to actually Control Z to undo that. And if I tap the bar at the top, which is our loop brace, it highlights all of the tracks, which is what I want. And Control D to copy those out. And now that's given us a 16-bar section to work with, which is exactly what I want. I'm going to get rid of this riser here, and I'm going to get rid of this riser here. And this gives me both of these risers now, each at the end of an 8-bar section. So every 8 bars on this groove here will have a different riser sound. I'm going to go ahead and just really casually scroll into the beginning there and put a fade in, and scroll way in and put a fade out at the end. Do that same thing with the other riser. Because we chopped these out of, audio, I just want to make sure that these tiny fades at the end will prevent any possible clicks or pops from coming through on those tracks. And now we've gone from a 4-bar groove all the way up into a 16-bar groove. Finding those little riser sounds from that preset, trimming those out, did in fact progress the session, gave me an idea as to where to go there. We can take this track off of record and put the input back to normal. Now that we've recorded a bunch more audio though, it'd be nice to embed all of this back into the session. So we're going to go File, Collect All, and Save. Make sure everything is still on Yes, and say OK. And now all of the samples are saved inside of the folder on the hard drive where this project is. So it's really easy to share an Ableton project with someone else as long as they have the same plugins that you are using. Let's go ahead and see what we've got here at this time. Start getting a little bit of section stuff happening by taking the ride out of the first 8-bar section. Yeah. And let's do this. So we've got the hat on the second, the ride on the second. Let's remove one of the hats when the ride comes in. Let's take a listen to these. Yeah, let's remove that one when the ride comes in. So now we've already got a little bit of A and B type of, thinking happening here. What we could do, gonna bring that chord stab up another decibel. This is starting to come together, you guys. All right. Are you guys still with me today? I know this is kind of a different one than what we normally do. We're in Ableton for the first time today. Hey, we got Vortex in the chat. Thanks for tuning in. It's not really a new dedicated time. I'm just trying to do some more streams. And I want to do deeper streams where we get involved in a lot more geeky content. For those of you who missed the beginning, this groove started as something that I created in the Eurorack last night. Just a really basic kind of kick and bass and percussion groove. We multi-tracked, recorded that out using the 1010 Blue Box mixer, and then we brought those tracks in, and we got them working to the grid inside of Ableton. We added the Eventide black hole reverb, and we added the Eventide ultra tap delay to an effects send. And we're just sort of building at this point and having a good time. I think what we'll do is we'll bring Avenger back into the mix and maybe scroll through a few more presets from Avenger and see if anything sort of jumps out at us that we might like to add to this. We're just going to scroll to the next preset and see what happens. Again, I can't stress that enough. For those of you who maybe are afraid of using presets or don't like to use presets, I just want to remind you how we used a preset to create something else that wasn't that preset's original intention. I heard those little backwards riser sounds coming through that patch, and we trimmed just those out and use those now as a, not how they were intended in an arpeggio, but as little risers, for instance. And I really want to encourage you guys to sometimes just take the time and just randomly scroll through presets. Not quite what we want. I think what we'll do is make the pattern like this so that it starts every 2 bars. That way I don't have to keep hitting stop to get it to go to the next one. Alright, and let's scroll some presets. What happens if we go down an octave? I kind of like this sound here, but it's a little bit high pitched for what I think we should add. What happens if we go down 1 octave on that? Maybe we get rid of these extra midis for now as well. Whoops. Nope, it's not quite right. Let's keep going. Okay, that's very techno sounding though. And it has a really nice built-in filter cutoff effect on the mod wheel. I'm kind of liking this. Let's see what happens if we go down an octave. No, too much conflicting with our bass down there. Hey, thanks for tuning in, Hayden. It's pretty loud and everything, but do you guys like that? I'm going to start trying to get this in the groove, unless you guys think I should keep scrolling. If you're not vibing it, you personally, if you're not digging that sound, just write keep scrolling in the chat, We'll see what everybody thinks. And if there's enough keep scrollings, then we'll keep scrolling. But I think what I'm going to do is attempt to record like a 16-bar section of this out. And the reason that I'm keeping all of these tracks in audio today is it just really is easy for me in my workflow to be able to see everything in audio. I can cut and paste as needed. What's happening, Opie? So what we're going to do, I think, is extend this clip out to be a full 16-bar clip. And I'm going to consolidate that so that it's one big long clip. And cool. And what I want to do is I want to do some automation in Ableton on that mod wheel. But there's one extra step we need to do, if I'm not mistaken, to make this happen. We need to click on this little triangle here. Yeah, fantastic. And here's where we can get some parameters of the virtual synthesizer out of it to be able to automate. All we need to do is go configure, and then we just need to wiggle on the synthesizer whatever knob we want to automate. I'd like to automate the mod wheel, and nope, we're not getting it. It would have been nice if we did, though. Alright, I'm not really sure why that didn't work. It's been a long time since I've tried to automate the mod wheel inside of this. That should have worked, is the thing. But that's okay. For the live stream, we'll just do this a different way. I was going to program in an automation of that mod wheel, but I'll just do it in real time with the mouse, and we'll just record it to audio that way. No worries. I just want to have sort of like baked into that that sound, like that mod wheel opening up. So I've added a new track here. I'm going to tell the new track, where it should record from by clicking where it says external in. And I'm just going to choose the track above it, which is track 9, Avenger, record from this track. If I arm this track for recording by pressing the record button now, and I press record, up here at the top, it's going to start recording that to audio. Cool. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2. We're going to build it up. 1, 2, 3. I know it's too loud. Sorry. 4. We'll fix that. 5, 6, 7. And slam it back down. Okay, so that's all I wanted to get in that automation anyway, and now I've recorded that in manually. So we have an audio track underneath there now with that recording on it. I could take it off of record and take it off of record arm. I could put it up in the mix, so that Avenger is now the last track there. And here we have that cool arpeggio with that sort of, mod wheel movement baked into it as audio. I'm going to hit Control R to rename this clip, and I'm going to call this let's call this like Big Arp 01, and then over here the same thing, Big Arp 01. And let's just save at this time. Let's go ahead and take a look at the EQ frequency on that new ARP. Let's bring it down in the mix quite a bit, maybe 5 decibels. All right. Remove some of the lows here that don't need to be there. A little heavy on those mids. I'm going to tame those just a little bit. Boost the high frequencies up just a tiny little bit on this one. All right. And it doesn't have any effects on it currently, which is what we want, which is really what we want, because now we can just drown it in the Eventide effects. We can send it to that black hole, and we can send it to our delay send as well. I'm going to keep it the whole mix playing and start sending it a little bit to those effects, and we'll see how it sounds. Here's the, let's do the reverb first. No, let's do the delay first. I like to send it like way too much so you can really hear it. Then kind of tame it as needed. Now let's do the reverb. It's too low in the mix. Let's fix that. What we need to do here. What we need to do, I think, is create a little bit of volume automation so that as this arpeggio keeps getting louder and louder as I'm opening up the filter cutoff from Avenger there, that the volume doesn't just continue growing in the mix. We can do this pretty easily by automating the gain knob that's on the utility of that track. Again, for those of you who might have missed that, I have it set up in Ableton, so whenever I load a new track, so if I go Command T to load a new audio track, that it loads those tracks by default with the FabFilter Pro Q3 plugin on it and the Ableton utility plugin on those. So if we go here to the big ARP that we recorded, here it is, it's got our, FabFilter Pro Q3, but it also has the utility on it. And the utility has this gain setting here, and this is what I want to do when I want to automate volume. I want to automate this gain knob here. Now, why am I doing it that way instead of just going over here to where the volume is on the track and just automating this button right over here? Well, the reason is because if I automate the volume over here on the, I'm trying to point again, over here on the right-hand side, and then say later I want to adjust the volumes in the mix, it becomes a little bit difficult to do because I've got automation on this here. But if I put the automation someplace else, it still leaves me control over all of the levels in the mix over here on the right-hand side. That was a technique that took me quite a lot of time to get into my workflow when I first started using Ableton. I was kind of like, yeah, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to automate the thing where I need it, you know. But then you get into, you know, situations where you really would like to readjust those track levels, and it becomes like a freaking nightmare, if you get my drift. And so when you're not automating that, when you're automating something else to get your volume changes, you still have control over your mix levels, and it's a really good way to go about it. So we're just going to right click on this gain knob, and we're going to choose show automation in new lane, okay? What that's going to do is put us into automation mode and literally give us a line of automation that's controlling that volume knob. So I can do whatever I want to do with that volume knob. I can make it, you know, dance around if we want. We don't want that. We just want it to very, very subtly come down in volume as the filter is bringing up in volume. So I'm going to put in 2 dots here. These represent the points of automation, like where the automation is going to start and where the automation is going to stop. Now right here at where it starts, the gain is at 0 dB, and right here, you know, we're just going to make it come down a little bit. Right there, it's now over that, you know, 8-bar section. It will start off at, actually 9-bar section. Start off at 0 decibels, and by the time it gets to the end, it will have brought that down in volume by 3 decibels. And when it goes back around to the beginning again, it's going to know to start that volume back off at 0 again. Hopefully, this will start, you know, as the filter opens up on the arpeggio, keep that volume a little bit more where it needs to be instead of getting so loud. And we'll adjust that as we need to here. We'll just let it play through a few times and adjust as we need to. We can actually probably go about halfway through here. If I right click on the dot, I can type in a specific value number. This is much better. I'm going to bring our loop brace back now, so we're back to the full 16-bar loop. Can't do a velocity edit when I'm dealing with a full sound though, big up video. I'm not hitting individual notes here. This is just a piece of recorded audio that's getting, I'm pointing again for some reason, sorry everyone. As this continues, you know, along its timeline of recorded audio, it's getting louder, so we're bringing the volume down. I don't have any notes that I can change the velocity on recorded audio. Closer. Let's go ahead and add a crash in at this time. Keep that ARP open actually. Just to explain what's happening there, I'm going in and out of automation mode by pressing A on my keyboard. It's the shortcut to get us into the automation lanes. And we can work inside of Ableton and leave all these automation lanes open as we keep adding, you know, more automation per track and whatnot. Or we can just hit the A button and go in and out of that and keep the screen, you know, really neat looking when we're not in automation mode. Go ahead and zoom in, just put a tiny fade out at the end of that arpeggio. We just added as well. And I think what we're going to do at this time is go ahead and add my go-to impact sound. Electronisounds packs. I think I have Dean's go-to effects here. yeah, Dean's Effects Dash, cool. And then here I have like a noise impact sound that I like to use often in my music. If you've been following the channel, you've probably heard this sound a million times already. Go ahead and take that off of warp and just fade the end out a tiny little bit there. Cool. Bring the volume down on that noise impact sound and go to the EQ on that noise impact sound and remove all the frequencies below about 1000 hertz. So it's just a top kind of sort of a sound, and we'll hear that now. And if I solo that sound, it just sounds like that. Kind of a little crash sound. We can go over to our mix as well, and we can run a little bit of reverb and delay sends on that sound to sort of get it in the same acoustic space as a lot of our other sounds in the mix. We can go ahead and maybe put that in on the downbeat of every 16 bars. Might be nice to have every 8 bars at this time. What let's do is go ahead and duplicate the entire pattern that we have. Whoops. Control Z to fix that. If I grab by the loop brace, whoops, and get everything highlighted and hit Command D, it just duplicates the whole thing. And now I can just stretch this out into a 32 bar loop. And what we can do is maybe delete that big arpeggio from the first 32 bars there, so that we're actually now starting to move Avenger at the bottom. So now that we're actually starting to create more of an arrangement. You know, we've got our ride happening here, things are coming in, things are going out, etc. We might want to go ahead and remove, no, we'll let that play off of it for now. Maybe we'll remove the weird percussion hit for this second half, you know. How does that sound? And with it, maybe we want that back. No, it's not. We'll take that out. Cool. So we're getting a little bit more variation and sections sort of put together here. Hey, what's happening, Wall? What let's do, I think, is maybe make a little bit of a dramatic pause before our arpeggio comes in by sort of just pausing a few elements in the bar right before it comes in. Just zooming in here. You can change the grid size you're working with in Ableton a few different ways. If you right click, you can go down here and you can choose the grid size, 1/32, you know, 1/16, whatever. But you can also just hit Command and 1 to put more lines on the screen, or Command and 2 to take lines away from the screen. So if I just press Command and 1 a few times, that, you know, puts us into more like 16th notes. And what I want to do is just bring that note in a little bit there. We're going to go ahead and, what is this, the ride? Yeah, let's pause that as well. Go ahead and fade that out there. And this is the hats, so we'll go ahead and just do a quick pause here as well. And what we want to do is we want the kick drum to pause for just a tiny moment. So we'll make that happen as well. And let's see here. That gives this riser some more room to breathe, and it sort of just gives us a little bit more like transition into these and creates more, you know, like I was saying earlier, more like sections per se. Let's listen to that. Actually, let's go ahead and take these chord stabs out, I think, for the first 8 maybe. And also take out the percussions for the first 8, and maybe take out these hats for the first 8 and see what happens. Yep. Actually, maybe we'll hit Control Z and bring these hats back, and maybe we'll take these hats out for the first. What does that do? No. Let's make it a full 8 though. go ahead and make a little tiny pause right here as well. And just bring this sort of back and just pause the kicks before we get these new sounds coming in. These little tiny pauses give the listener's ear sort of like a tip-off that something new is about to happen, per se. And it makes it a lot easier to follow along. We're sort of doing arrangement type of stuff here. Yeah. Yeah, that's very nice. That's that we've got quite a bit of, pieces in here. Let's do that collect all thing again. We're going to go File and Collect All and Save. I'm going to go OK. Looks like we've been streaming for about 2 hours. How's the MacBook doing? It's not feeling as warm as I was expecting it to, actually, so that's a positive sign. And how are we doing on the camera here? Has it been a lot of frame rate dropping, or is it relatively smooth? Are we doing okay with all this so far, you guys? All right. Let's see here. What do we want to add? What let's do, I think, is copy this 4-bar section here. And if I just hold Option and drag these over, I can just copy those little elements over as well. And I think we'll get that noise crash here by hitting Option and just dragging that over. Now let's go ahead and put build a larger riser here. I have kind of a default way that I like to get a white noise riser into my tracks. I have a preset, per se, that I have saved, and if we go into the presets and the instrument presets and the instrument rack presets, we can find it. It's a white noise riser preset that I'm using the Sylenth VST instrument to create some white noise. And I don't need to download a new version of Sylenth today. Here's that duck again, so we can get some pumping on this. And I just got it set to like a white noise riser sound. And I like to get it to be like either a 2 or a 4-bar white noise riser. I think in this situation, 4 bars would be real good. So I'm going to highlight 4 bars on this track. I'm going to hit Command, Shift, and M, and that creates a MIDI clip on that MIDI track. I'm going to go ahead and just open this up a bit. And I'm going to put this on like F2, because we're writing in the key of F. If I hit legato, it extends that note out all the way. If I hit Command, I can bring the velocity on this note up to maximum velocity of 127. Then I can maybe bring the volume on the track down a little bit in case it's crazy loud or something. Bring in that. I like to adjust the cutoff as needed depending on what that particular track needs. This one went up a little bit too extreme, so we'll see if we can't tame that. That's a lot better. What we're going to go ahead and do now is just turn that riser into a piece of audio very quickly by just right-clicking on the track and choosing Freeze Track. And then we right-click again and we choose Flatten. Now what we've done is we've just freezed and flattened that track to a piece of audio. And what I can do is I can go into the very end there, start zooming in. I can actually just get rid of that little bit that's hanging over. And I can zoom all the way in here and put the tiniest little fade out at the end of that riser sample, just like so. We can actually get in here and name this as well by hitting Command R. And we can call this white noise riser. Cool. And then we can make sure we've got an EQ on this track. We'll go plugins. We'll go Fab Filter Pro Q3. And I'll put my default setting on, which allows us to just, quickly drag up the bottom of that and remove any low frequency content that we want to. On the risers, on the noise risers, I like to remove everything beneath about 600 hertz on those. Cool. Cool. I just want that to be the tiniest little bit louder, so we're going to do that on the actual sample itself here. And then I just want to send a little bit, bring this down, just want to send a little bit of that new sound, the white noise riser, to our delay and to our reverb. In fact, I think I'll just do 12 o'clock on both of those. Now again, for those of you who might be tuning in late, our delay today that we're using is the Ultra Tap delay from Eventide. And I've actually layered 2 different instances of those back to back to get a little bit more interesting sound in the delay. The reverb that we're using today is the Eventide Black Hole reverb, which sounds absolutely fantastic on desktop as well as iOS. The reason that I wanted to work specifically with the Eventide effects today is that the iOS Eventide apps are currently on sale. All of them are on sale for 50% off, and the desktop plugins are on sale, I think, for $39 a piece. So super awesome sale on those plugins happening right now. Let's go ahead and just verify this riser is in the mix now that we've added those effects. My Complete is the middle version, Fade Man. The only difference between like the middle version and then like the ultimate version is the more sound packs. And what that means is not really, you get a few more instruments, like 2 or 3 more instruments, but really what you're getting is you're getting a lot more sample packs. And as a sample maker, personally, I didn't really need that huge amount of extra samples because I've got just a lifetime worth of samples already, and I'm always making more samples. So my version of Complete basically just has lots of the instruments in it. I do have some of their sample packs, and I do use some of those sounds as well. As a sample maker, I definitely am not limiting myself to just my own sounds. I think anybody who limits themselves to like no presets and only using their own sounds and all that kind of stuff, I just think those kind of limitations really, like, at the end of the day, I mean, they're just going to slow you down. And anyone listening to our music isn't really going to care if we use the preset. All they want is they want something to move them, you know what I mean? And there's a time and a place for designing your own stuff, and there's a time and a place for just getting stuff done, getting stuff made. So not much of an arrangement, really. We're just kind of knocking them right into the beat today. Again, we originally were thinking we were going to make a 125 beats per minute thing. I wasn't really expecting to make, crazy hard techno today. But I think it's coming together pretty well, actually. Bring the level on that chord stab up. Yeah, I'm going to bring this level on the chord stab up again. Let's take a look at our tonal balance now. See how we're filling in these middle frequencies now? It's still a little bit too hot on the low end. So we'll start taming that ever so subtly and ever so gently, instrument by instrument. We don't want to just take like a EQ on the master bus and just start being real dramatic with it. We want to find the instruments that are causing those frequencies and tame them individually. Very subtle changes here. But I'm going to take our kick drum, and I'm going to put a low shelf filter on that. And I'm going to take all the frequencies on that kick drum beneath 100 hertz, and I'm going to bring them down by 1 decibel. Just that simple. We're going to do that same thing with the bass. I'm going to open up the bass filter here. Play the groove while I'm doing it. I'm going to grab just above where that meat bass frequency is showing up. Here it's about 100 hertz. Now I'm going to put a low shelf filter on this and bring that down by 1 decibel. So we've now brought the low frequencies down in the mix by 2 decibels. And we'll see what type of an effect that has on our master. Not a lot, but we're getting there. What let's do is extend this out again by grabbing those and hitting Control D. And now I've got an 8-bar loop at the end. I'm going to hit Command and S and save at this time. We've been going for about 2 hours and 10 minutes. I want to keep going for a bit longer today. I don't really know exactly what we're going to do, but I kind of want to, do a long, a little bit longer than 2 hours so we can see that the MacBook is or isn't holding up, I can, turn this back down to 125. It's not going to sound super great. I don't think we have everything set to just change. Yeah, and when you're stretching, one of the things about stretching samples as well, guys, is that if you're stretching samples to a tempo that's faster than the original sample, that will 9 times out of 10 sound fantastic. And if you are trying to stretch a sample to a slower tempo than it was at originally, 9 times out of 10, that's going to sound horrible. That's just the way, I don't make up the rules. That's just the way that, slicing and sampling works. It's always easy to stretch that tempo faster, but whenever you try to pull that tempo down, once you go about, 5 or so BPM away from the original sample tempo, you start to hear those weird artifacts, and it's not super great. So we're going to leave this at 155 today. We got kind of a little section here that's sort of a break after our big build up here with the arpeggio. And maybe what we'll do is use a different impact sound for this kind of a break section before we start building it up and putting more things in. What we can do is go back to my go-to effect samples, and I have kind of like a go-to down filter sample that I use as well. We're just gonna copy this track down and delete those. Delete that one and keep the noise filter. Cool. So this way it's sort of on its own track. We're going to call this down filter 01. Cool. And save at this time. Just going to make sure the EQ looks okay on this. Yeah, cool. It's up to 1000. Let's make it cut off everything beneath 800 hertz on the down filter. The down filter sample sounds like this. Just sort of like a big sort of impact sound. It's just a little bit different variation of, the noise burst that we're using as the main crash. There's our noise burst. There's our down filter. So it's just a little different. Maybe we'll bring that EQ back up to 1000. Cool. So I'm just hear that. I just want to hear that again. Rather, we're going to hear the ARP build up and then sort of drop off into our new section. Hey, what's happening, Sean? Start halfway through this break. I want our other hats to come back in. So we're going to hold Option and drag these back over to the second half. Yeah. Oh yeah. And the ride as well. So if I hold Option, I can drag and copy that over. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pause the kick drum for like just one beat before those sounds come in, and maybe we'll do the same for these hi-hats. This is just a quarter note here, just the tiniest little pause before those sounds, new sounds come in, and the bass line won't stop, so that may or may not work. Let's find out. Just the level. All right. Maybe we pause the very last note of that bass line. Let's find out. Ooh, come on, with that tiny little pause there where it just stops for like this much. I love that kind of momentum stuff. Got a tiny little click on something there is causing a click. Let's find out what it is and let's get rid of it. I think it's this actual bass note just has the tiniest little click on it. So if I separate that by highlighting what I want and hitting Control E, it turns into its own little section of audio. And I can zoom in now, and there's a split there. So I can actually go in and I can put a fade out on the one before it, and I can put this tiny fade in right there. And I think that might get rid of the click that I'm hearing in my head. Almost. All right, let's hear that in full context. Hey, thanks, Sean. I appreciate that. All right. What let's do then is consider, yeah, cool. All right, I'm going to switch this to one bar. Grab these little things up at the top and hit Command and D to bring them to another section. I'm going to hit Command and L and loop that section. And now what we've got is actually let's make this an 8-bar section to work with by copying it one more time and putting that loop brace to a full 8. And then let's save. What we've got here is now it's like another section, and we can add another new sound on. So let's do just that. Now I need to try to decide, in real time whether I'm going to search through samples or whether we're going to go to an instrument, and if so, what instrument, and all that kind of stuff. This is a little bit difficult to do all of these things in real time. Let me just think for a second. Do I still have the Avenger in the mix? Yeah, we do. Cool. Let's see if we can get Avenger to give us some inspiration again. It's been working pretty well so far. Often I like to, if we've gotten a few things out of Avenger, I often might like to, use a different synthesizer when I'm trying to find the next sound, so that we're literally collabing with as many different companies and sound designers as possible. But for the purposes of this stream, and because Avenger's awesome, let's just keep Avenger open for now and see if we can maybe find something that would go here. Let's see what happens. I just open up Avenger again, and we just start scrolling through more presets here in the arpeggio section of the Techno Bank. Oh no. It's like an acid lead. We start getting into that 303 action. Should we take this into acid territory? What do you guys think? I think we could probably get away with this. Fade Man's about it. All right, let's do this. What I'm going to do, I think, is just add another new track. We're going to tell this new track. This is just the fastest way I can think to do this in the live stream. This might not be the most efficient way to run Ableton and all that kind of stuff. I'm not Mr. Bill, and we're just having a fun time today. So if I'm not being the most efficient, just forgive me on that, guys. We're going to go ahead and hit record so we can record the audio coming off of that Avenger. And now all I have to do is just hit record, and it's going to start recording. Then I can, bring Avenger up, work with that mod wheel in real time, and get that baked into the recording real fast. Let's do that again so that it starts right on that downbeat. There it is. All right. that's really all I want. I think that the first section there was perfect. I just want that little mod wheel like push up at the end of the 4 bars, so it kind of feels like we're, pushing that momentum forward. I'm going to go ahead and mute the actual Avenger track at this time, and I'll bring that down to the bottom. And here we have, let's change the color on this so it doesn't quite match exactly the one beneath it. And we're just going to call this Acid 01 for now. Acid 01. And let's go ahead and save at this time. Cool. I'll take it off of recording, and I'll put that track back into its default input mode as well. Now we can take a look at the EQ that's on that Acid recording. Can zoom in to the very end of that recording, get a tiny little bit of a fade out there so we're not getting any clicks at the end. I can do the same thing and just scope out the beginning. Looks fine. Fantastic. All right, I'm going to double this up. And actually, I think we'd like to go ahead and Command and J so we can make that one solid loop there. I'm going to go ahead and rename this so it looks clean again and save. All right. Let's go ahead and hear this in context. And I think what we want to do is maybe have this start with the cutoff a lot lower and then sort of filter this sound in to introduce it, but I'm not 100% sure. Let's go back in our session and sort of hear the transition into this new acid sound. I'm going to copy the duck and put him on the acid sound as well. Really subtle though. I have an idea actually already. What I'd like to do is to have that exact same pause happen again before the beat comes in. So I'm going to grab these tracks here, and I'm going to Command and D, so we'll duplicate them over one section, and then we'll just zoom in to this end of the ride, and we'll sort of mimic what we've created here. If I hit Command and 1, I can give myself more grid lines, to work with here. I'm going to trim this all the way back to the beginning of this measure. Tiny fade out on that ride so it doesn't give us any clicking or popping. And now what we've got is we've got that tiny rest right here, and we've got that tiny rest right here as well. Let's hear that in context. Okay, so we're listening for this pause. It's going to pause again and start that acid line. Yeah, that's very nice. But what we want to do for sure is filter that acid line down so that when it starts, it's not like wide open. All right. We're going to use the default auto filter built into Ableton Live for this. I'm just going to make sure my utility is the last thing in this chain. And I'm just going to play this so you guys can hear what this filter is doing to the acid line. We're just filtering it down. It's a low pass filter, right? Give it a little more resonance, and a little drive. A little more drive, maybe. All right, fantastic. And let's put a little more pumping on this. And again, the pumping is all it's doing is kind of ducking the other sounds in the mix every quarter note, so that every time the kick drum hits, it just really gently kind of ducks some other elements out of the way, allowing that kick drum to just punch through. And as we keep adding more elements, the kick doesn't start to get buried in the back of the mix now, but rather can continue to punch through all of these new sounds. And the more pumping, you know, you put on there, then you actually start hearing that pump, and that may be what you're going for sometimes. In this one, we're not really looking for a pumpy mix per se, just enough of that sidechain compression to sort of keep our kick drum in the foreground. Let's start it right about here. And what I'm going to do is I'd like to automate this knob now. So I just need to right click on it and choose Show Automation in New Lane. That puts us into automation mode inside of Ableton. And if I zoom in on that track, I can get a really good idea of what I'm actually trying to do. I can right click on the grid. I can change the grid size to 1 bar. So now I can really see definitively, like in bars on the grid, what I'm doing. And I can sort of make it so that, let's see here, we start here, and then by the time we get to the 4 that it takes, I can make it take like 4 bars. I could make it take 8 bars to filter up. I think for the purposes of this stream, let's just make it take a full 8 bars to sort of filter up and introduce itself to the listener. And then what we'll do now is go ahead and copy this whole section over again by hitting Control and D. We'll move that loop brace out to the end. And then down here at the bottom, we'll just fix that automation so that the filter stays open and doesn't, you know, go back down and try to filter itself up again. Let's sort of hear this in transition. I mean, in context. Hey, thanks, Andy. Thanks, Hayden. Yeah, what Sean said, guys, these keyboard shortcuts are definitely available when you right-click. You definitely get a lot faster when you memorize the keyboard shortcuts, though. All right, we are getting there. I'm starting to now minimize some of the tracks on the right so that I can continue hopefully keeping, you know, as much on the screen as possible here. Let's see here. So now we've got a total of 13 tracks. Avenger is still in the mix, but it's not actually being used at this time. So we don't have any sort of a clap yet in the mix. Oh, we definitely need that. Let's go ahead and go File and Collect All and Save. And then let's just add a clap in so we can get some sort of a backbeat type of thing happening that we can, you know, bring in and out through different sections. Speaking of which, looks like our weird percussion hit is only happening in this one tiny section in the beginning. So it might be fun if we were able to just copy these down and, you know, have it happen here as well. Let's see. Oh, I have the track actually turned off. That's working. All right, cool deal. Let's see here, clap. Okay, don't lose focus, team. We need that clap. We need that clap. I'm gonna just go into my sample packs and let's go into I don't know. No, those are just loops. Okay, let's go into Velvet Carbon Techno sample pack. And see, those are loops. I'd like just one shot maybe. Here we go, sounds and drums. Fantastic. And now we've got like claps and stuff. Cool. I'm just going to go ahead and play this groove and see if any of these claps sort of gel with what we have going here. This is cool. I really like a nice call and response, a call and response sort of in my techno tracks. Oftentimes when I'm putting like a clap in, I might make the first clap in the bar like a semitone pitched up, and I might take the second clap in the bar and make that a semitone pitched down so that you've got a tiny little bit of like a call and then like a response in that sound. But this is sounding actually pretty neat here to sort of go back and forth between these two different clap samples. So I think we're going to do that. I think we're going to just add a new track here and just bring in these. If I, make the grid size 16th notes, we can very easily put this clap where it actually belongs on the grid. And then we can take that second clap And we can put that one where it belongs on the grid. And let's see here, start zooming in a little bit, make sure that I'm doing this correctly. Just make sure that little tiny fade outs on the end of these samples, so there's no chance that it's going to, click or pop. Just loop this one bar and check out these claps real fast. Bringing the volume down, and let's take a look at the EQ. EQ looks pretty good. Bringing the volume down on our first one. Better. Yes. And what let's do to try to make them even that tiniest little bit more evened out and cohesive sounding is put a really gentle compressor here. Ableton has a fantastic compressor built in, and if we click on the little arrows that are next to these effects names, you actually open up presets. And there's a preset here called Gentle Squeeze that I find is very useful for just that, just a gentle squeeze of compression. And what I'll do is I'll drop it on the track, and then I'll take a look at how much it's actually gain reducing, and we'll adjust it as necessary. Just very subtle here. Whoa, yeah, we don't need it to be that much at all. So I'm going to bring that threshold way up on this. That's much better. And I'm going to bring this down to the mix. I'm going to bring these claps up here. Cool. Let's go ahead and copy these out as well. I'm going to just select one bar for the grid size. I'm going to highlight one bar and hit Command D a bunch of times until it's like an 8-bar loop here. Cool. Now what we're going to do is just highlight that whole 8 bars, okay? And I'm just going to hit Command and J, which is going to consolidate that into one, clip. We're going to rename this track claps because there's 2 different claps on it. So Command and R, claps. Cool deal. We're going to hit Command and D and duplicate that clap track over. I'm not sure we want it to play all the way through. Let's find out. Let's go back a little bit, and then we'll play through in context and see how it sounds. Here comes the pause. One more pause. Oh, those claps are too loud. All right, let's get some reverb and delay on those claps to get them in the same acoustic space as everything else here. Oh, they're over here now, right. Here we go. Let's give them some of that delay. Maybe just the tiniest little bit of delay. There we go. Now I think there might be a little too low in the mix. Let's take a look at our tonal balance and see how we're doing, guys. Now that is a whole lot better than it was a minute ago. Our lows are starting to, I'm still trying to point here, our lows are starting to even out a bit. Got a little bit of a boost here. It's not exactly what we want. We still got a tiny little dip in this area. But our high frequency content is looking a lot better as well. Let's go ahead and do a collect all and save at this point. And let's see, we've been going for about 2.5 hours. The Mac is actually surprisingly sort of evened out. It's really not that warm. Feeling the audio interface. It's a little warmer than I would like, but it doesn't feel like super hot. For those of you who might not have seen this part, it might be just joining me. I've got the Mac over here, and I've got a new MacBook Pro over here that I'm trying to use specifically for streaming. I've got a new audio interface connected there, and I'm taking an HDMI out of the Mac running that into an Elgato HD60S Plus, and running that into the MacBook Pro so that we can get the Ableton screen inside of OBS, excuse me, on the stream. And we were having a little bit of issue with the Mac and the fan getting a little bit loud and getting a little bit warm. But it seems to be doing okay and holding up okay. Fantastic. All right, let's listen to this from the beginning and see what we've created so far. Oftentimes, I think one of the most difficult things it is to do in real time on these streams is the actual arrangement. Because this is something, you know, where once you got your tracks playing together, you'll often spend quite a bit of time, you know, constructing that arrangement and the flow and, you know, of your track. We're just having fun today and creating a little bit of little sections and little pieces and little bits of movement that we could potentially flesh out into more of a track. Here's what we have from the beginning. What if we get rid of those hats for the first 4? What if we get rid of that noise crash for the first 4? I don't like that weird percussion hit starting right off the jump, so let's let that start halfway through instead. I don't think I would probably actually start a track with just a kick in the bass, but I'm just trying to create some sort of an arrangement here that we can continue working with. Maybe this one too. I think that is maybe more of a techno opening. We're bringing that chord in too fast. Those backwards riser chords. I think I want more effects on those. Yeah, they're totally dry in the mix. Let's put the delay and yeah, let's put the delay and reverb up quite a bit on those backward chords risers. Yeah. Like to put just like a quick stab of the ARP there so that you don't forget, like, so we sort of keep a consistency is what I mean. Yeah, let me just grab, let's say, 1 bar of that and hold Option and drag it over here. And what I think I want to do is just make this like really short, like a quarter note. Yeah, cool. Let's put a little tiny fade out at the end of that so there's no clicking or anything like that. And how does this sound in context? I want it there. Dun, dun, banana. Dun, 1, 2, right here. Yes. 1. Maybe we'll have it go the full 4 notes. That could be interesting. Maybe it's a little low for using as a transition piece, though. We want a little more attention on that. Let's find out. No, I still think that's too much. Let's try that again. In context, though. That as well. The claps are definitely too loud. just copying this little divot, you know, over here. See if we can sneak it in before the drop to the acid. I don't know, maybe. It's a little different where I place it in the bar as that first one. Let's see. Yeah, no, I think what we need to do is actually sort of duplicate this exact same placement, and maybe we can literally do that 4 times. I'm not sure if we can get away with that, but maybe. Let's find out. Whoops, stuck on the chord here. Yes. Okay, but what we want is still some sort of a build here, a big build happening because we're going into that nice acid. So for sure we want our white noise riser to happen there. I'm going to go ahead and just copy this over so that it happens here as well. There we go. And we definitely want this to pause for dramatic effect, maybe right about there, as I'm still trying to point, as this last synth hit comes in. Let's go ahead and just make sure there's no click at the end of that there, and make that noise riser kind of just stop and pause for us as that last hit before the drop sort of comes in. Yeah, that's much better. And as a last thing to further build up that, to further build up that build, let me go ahead and save, and let's drop in a plugin that we can use on the master bus to sort of create a larger build there. This is the, what am I looking for here? It's Dada Life Endless Smile. This is a really fun plugin to use for creating like sweeps on your buses or on your master bus. In fact, we're going to grab this and we're going to put that before our limiter. Now this is on the master. I'm going to just basically scroll the knob so you guys can hear what it's doing, and you'll kind of follow what kind of an effect this is right off the jump. So we can use it as a sort of a build-up effect here. And what we'll do is we'll do some automation on this to make it happen. I'm going to go down to 1 bar, and we're on the master. What do I want here? I want to be on, let's see. You're right, the intensity. Perfect. Okay. All I need to do is right-click on the intensity knob, which is, you know, it's a really simple effect as to what I want to actually automate. And we're going to go Show Automation in New Lane. That's put us into an automation lane on the master bus that I can use to automate that intensity knob. And then we can choose what preset we want to use inside the plugin and all that kind of stuff. What we want to do is, let's see here, this is going to be a 4-bar rise up, I believe. So we're going to take the intensity, come on now, where am I? Oh, I see, cool. And then, yeah, so see how the little dude there gets really happy, gets that endless smile, you know, as the build up occurs. Woo-hoo! All right, so we're just going to sort of do that thing, and then we're going to drag it right back down on the stopping point. Except I really want our maximum point to match up with that last chord stab, if you get my drift, and then sort of back down in that tiny little section there. We may not want this to be as extreme as it is, and we may use different effects here. We're going to find out if any of these really gets what I want here, and let's find out. This is going to affect everything in the track. It's on the master bus. This is not the one I want for sure. It's adding a lot of, like, you know, delay and stuff there. I'm going to go to the next preset up, which is called No Limit, and we're going to see what this one sounds like. pretty close to what I want, and if I do some adjusting on this automation curve here, I can really get in here, and if I can zoom in even more, I can really get in and adjust exactly when and how this knob is moving and how much it's moving. Pretty close to what we want, but not quite right yet. Let's try again. These are just subtle changes on the actual sweep of that knob, so we can try to get it, you know, where we want it, in sync, in the mix per se. Get them a little bit more subtle still. If we can make this one to stop on that tiny little break, that would be so cool. Let's find out if that works. This is very subtle, but these kind of polishings, you know, add up to a well-rounded track. Nope, that's not quite right yet either. We still want to push that back over. No worries. One more time. Cool. Now what let's do, I'm pretty happy with the way that's sounding. Let's go ahead and do a little bit more automation at this time, and let's filter down that da-na-na, da-na-na, da-na-na part that's kind of leading us into the next section. And by doing so, it will kind of let the listener's ear know that something new is coming. We're going to grab the auto filter effect again, and we're just going to put that on the big ARP track. I'm going to put the utility as the last thing. And now if I play this, we'll hear it start to filter down a little bit. I'll put some more resonance on here. I'll change the filter type so we can add a little bit of drive as well. Yeah, we want to just fade that down basically. So I want to automate this filter cutoff knob. I'm going to right click on it and choose Show Automation in New Lane. It's going to give me a lane to just work with the automation there. I'm going to put in a couple dots, and I'm just going to tell this knob that as it progresses through this section, it should move that filter cutoff down, right? You see it moving here. It goes down a little bit further than I would like to. I want this to be a subtle effect, just to kind of help that transition find its own space. That last one is maybe not necessary and maybe taking away from the transition. I'm going to try to delete that last one and go through it again. Still have some work to do on that transition, but it's getting closer. I think close enough, you know, that we can move forward, you know. All right, what we want to do, I think, is build up that section even to another level of intensity. So I'm going to grab that section there, and I'm going to hit Command and D and copy that into the next section of 8 bars. Here we're going to go ahead and add something else and continue building up that section. Let's go ahead and put one of these melodic sort of riser things in before that happens. Awesome. And And let's put another one of those risers in at the end. And let's put our noise riser maybe here and also here. All right, let's hear that in context. We've got a nice save there, and what we need is like another sound in this section here that we can somehow get over that acid line and get over the weird percussion and all of the other elements that are going on at this time. I think we still have room to add something else on top of all of this. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We'll just keep using Avenger. And see if we can't find something else. How's my level again? There aren't plugins in Sausage Fattener. I'm not really sure how to answer that question. Sausage Fattener is just a plugin. It's a fattening plugin. I'm not really a big fan of it personally. I don't have it on my system, but it just sort of fattens up the sound. It can brighten up the sound. You know, it's basically like compression and like saturation sort of at the same time, which I can get by just adding a compressor or a saturator. Certainly, you know, useful plugin for certain kinds of music, certainly bass heavy, you know, genres and whatnot. Let's bring this Avenger back in and see what we can come up with. See if we can find anything to fit over the top of this real quick. Sure what that's doing. It was almost in tempo. It's going to be difficult because that first sound is taking up so much of the frequency spectrum. So we're definitely going to do probably a little bit of scrolling to find like a magic sound that really jumps in here. That's pretty nice. What does that sound like an octave lower? Now we've got sort of a trancey acid. I kind of like that. I think we're going to go ahead and just freeze the Avenger track by right-clicking and choosing freeze. And then we're going to go ahead and just right-click on it again, and choose flatten. And now what that's done is just turned that instrument into a piece of audio. That instrument is now gone from the mix, and we're just left with the piece of audio. So I can call this Avenger Arp 02. And copy that, and then we can just put that over here, Control R and Control Paste, and put Avenger ARP number 2. Now we can save, and now we've got that second ARP as a piece of audio. We can go over to the plugins rather, and we can grab FabFilter Pro Q3 so that we can get an idea of what this is actually looking like EQ-wise. Give it a little EQ. It's looking pretty good there. Oh, I see. All right. Can you guys see how even that's looking now? And then when I stop the music, we're going to lose our curve in just a minute. Or not today. Yeah, we will. But we have this little bump in the audio here at about 200 that I would still like to try to deal with. We're looking pretty darn good though. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of go through the tracks individually and start looking at the EQ for each individual instrument. And I'm going to see which of those instruments has like a heavy amount of content in that frequency range. And we'll see what we can do to get that sorted. It's right about the 2 to 300 hertz range. We're going to start by taking a look at the kick drum. That's pretty heavy there. So we can tame that a little bit. That's better. So these are very subtle. I know it looks like we've just taken a pretty serious dip out of this here, but this is really a decibel and a half we're taking away, and then we're taking away about 2 decibels here. So just a couple of decibels on that kick drum makes quite a bit of difference on the EQ. Now we're going to go ahead and take the EQ for the bass line and take a look at that a little bit more closely as well. Whoops, come on now. I'll make that large so we can get a better view of that. I don't really want to tame anything there. No, nothing here. Better. That's a lot smoother. You see how that kind of bump is a lot smoother now? All right. We're actually looking pretty darn good there. Pretty darn good. Pretty consistent and pretty even. That just sort of helps me know that like I'm keeping my frequency content, you know, in check, and that on the headphones I'm not like pushing way too much highs but just don't know it, or pushing way too much lows and just don't know it. I was really hoping that we would get into using more Eventide effects today, actually. But everything is sounding so good the way it is now. Maybe we could put a little bit of the send on this new arpeggio to try to get it in the same acoustic space as the rest of our sounds. But there's really not a lot more effects that this mix really is needing at this time. Let's see here, if we give just a little bit of reverb and delay to that new ARP, and maybe the tiniest amount to our acid line as well, so that it sort of sits in the same acoustic space as some of these other sounds. Yeah. Go ahead and double this whole section up at this time by just highlighting the whole section and hitting Command and D for duplicate. Now we've got like a 16 bar section there. And what might be fun is if we do a little bit of filter automation on our new arpeggio, so it doesn't just come in, you know, full blast, but rather has more of an evolution in how that appears in the track. And what we can do is we can just use the auto filter from the stock auto filter from Ableton again. It can change from a clean to an OSR filter, so we can bring that drive up a couple decibels, bring that resonance right up, maybe about 22. And let's hear what happens when we filter that new sound. Oops. right? I can filter it out. I can kind of bring it in now. So when we want to filter in a sound into the mix, the question you have to ask yourself is, you know, where does it sound good as its default position that we start from? That's pretty good, right down about 1,000 hertz. So now if we go to show automation in new lane, we get a full lane open here that we can automate that filter cutoff knob. I can put a dot here at the very beginning, and I can tell it that over the course of, you know, these 8 bars, that it should go ahead and filter up all the way. Here it's just a straight line. Let me move this window a little bigger, so whoops, a little bigger so we can actually see it. And cool. A little more. There we go. It's currently just a straight line of automation. It's moving that knob super evenly. But if I hold the option when I hover over that line and then I press the left mouse button, I now have control over the curve of this line. So I can make it even more sort of subtle and blending in like this here. Let's hear what this sounds like in context. I'm going to go back a ways, and now when that new arpeggio starts, it's going to kind of filter itself in instead of just, you know, blasting in right off the downbeat. Fading in that new part with the filter. Yeah, better. And now it's in. Let's go back just a little bit here. Some impact crashes on that section because it's really full of momentum. Let's take a listen to what we've created in its entirety today, guys. We've been going for about 3 hours, so it's probably appropriate to call it relatively soon. Sometimes I get into the groove, you know, once we start going, and then I could just go for quite some time. And that's sort of the idea. I'm trying to get more comfortable on these streams to, you know, go longer so that I can show you guys, you know, deeper and deeper techniques and deeper ideas. I'm hoping to be able to do some streams in the future where we're combining, you know, working with the Eurorack and sync with Ableton Live and building, you know, live jams with controllers in real time using Ableton Live and all this kind of like next level, you know, stuff to take the channel to a new level. Intro's not super great, just to kick in the bass, but we, you know, put something else there maybe, potentially. Like that down filter maybe. Like that down filter that we have coming in at the break might go really nicely at that downbeat to sort of just set it. Whoops. Need to copy that though, to sort of set off that downbeat a little bit more. Yeah, better. Just a little something, you know, hey, here we go.
I really appreciate that. I've been at this for a very long time, and I don't really have other hobbies or interests other than electronic music in all its forms. Yeah, the arrangement isn't quite right, you know, but just something that we can create in a live stream to get a feel for some sections. Cool. So much. All right. That's just basically, let's see. It's basically just, you know, how I build up my arrangements is I'll just sort of, you know, continue listening to things through and making adjustments on the way as these sections keep coming in and out. Definitely not going to go on for a ton longer, but I think we'll go File, Collect All, and Save, and maybe listen to this one more time through if I want to make, you know, any more adjustments. It's been just over 3 hours now. I really appreciate those of you who've been hanging out. And if you have any questions at all today, whether they be Ableton related, Eurorack related, Eventide effect related, or just music production, you know, related in general, please feel free to drop those in the chat. I'll do my best I can to answer any questions if you've got them. I'm interested for you to expand on that, Sean. What would you suggest that we use in the iPad that would allow us to trigger the loops in Ableton like this? Because I don't really know of a way to do that. If I was going to turn this into a live jam, we would start taking these elements over here and getting them over into this side, the arrangement view, where we would create scenes where I would go back and forth between those scenes. But there's not like an app for Ableton per se that allows us to just, you know, get right in and start triggering stuff from the iPad easily. If you know of something, please drop that in the chat and I will check it out. Yeah, Fade Man, you're absolutely right. That would be a great thing to work on. Like a break section that kind of drops from all this freneticism. Okay, so there's an idea. Often just listening to it back will spur off an idea for like another section. And I'm remembering now about that sort of cool arpeggio we have in the beginning. And I'm wondering if we could sneak that in over some of this stuff at the end when it really starts, you know, building up and getting pretty intense. And if I grab 8, let me get out of this automation mode so it's easier to look at. And I can just grab like 8 bars of that arpeggio. If I hold Option on the keyboard as I drag these along, it's just a copy. And now the original is left intact, you know. But we have a duplicate of that audio over here. This is another thing that I meant earlier by about all the audio inside of Ableton is really malleable and non-destructive. We can cut and chop and reverse and paste and move things around and still have that original piece of audio like non-affected. let's just see what happens about the arpeggio potentially slotting in this slot. I don't think that it will, but it might. Yeah, it doesn't. Oh well. It would have been cool if it did, and sometimes, you know, ideas like that are worth your time. So at this point, I just sort of listen, you know, over and over, and just sort of keep polishing, keep adding to. I'm just not sure what you mean, Sean, because we're in Ableton. I mean, I could certainly record audio loops out of this, but there is not really a reason to do that when you're in the creation process. We don't really need to turn these into loops at this time. Like I said, if we want to make this a live, if we wanted to make this a live jam, I'd have a, you know, a MIDI controller, so we could start assigning things to those knobs that we could control in real time, and we would then move this over to like the session view, per se. But there's not really any benefit to like just recording loops while you're in the arrangement view, because you can just copy anything around from any track as needed. What's happening in flip mode? All right, let's go back to the beginning of this ARP real quick. Yeah, old school hard trance. I'm living in the 90s still. And rather than fight it, I'm kind of embracing it. Like the way that all of these sounds are fitting together. The arrangement part, I would probably take a lot more time and sort of finesse about, but I think that the mixing on these headphones has come out pretty solid, all things said and done. The acid line flip mode was made in the was actually just a preset rather in the Avenger synth. From Vengeance, and it was a preset from their Techno expansion pack. Just got lucky, and that sort of slotted right in. For those of you who missed the beginning, we started this groove today by just multi-track recording a very simple starter techno groove out of the hardware Eurorack system. We used the 1010 Blue Box mixer and recorder to multi-track record that out. Then we brought those tracks over here inside of Ableton and got those aligned to the grid to get a really basic groove going here. And then we just started adding some more elements to those, and we used some effects from Eventide today. I really wanted to get into using more of their effects. The reason being is that all of the Eventide effects for iOS are currently on sale for 50% off. So now's a great time to jump in and grab one of those fantastic effects if there's one you've been maybe holding off on. The desktop equivalents of all those Eventide plugins are also on sale. They're like $39 right now, and that's an amazing price for desktop. Sorry we didn't get to work with more of the Eventide plugins today, but I think we did end up having a pretty solid session, all said and done, for the first test out with the new streaming situation. I'll need to watch this back as I do and kind of assess what needs to change and whatnot. But the phone camera seems to have kept up pretty well today and didn't quit on me. All right. Yeah, so we've been going for about 3 hours and 15 minutes. Um, would be nice to see how creation on the iPad can be expanded on the Mac or PC. Yeah, absolutely, Sean. We're definitely going to be doing sessions where we're taking stuff from the iPad and continuing it here. We're going to be doing a lot of new and interesting type of streams now that I've got this setup going. I really want to continue combining the iPad with the gear. I want to bring in Ableton. I want to bring in Ableton Link that's connecting a lot of the things in here. And I want to continue, hopefully, doing more of these live streams, more of these longer streams where we really get into the meat and potatoes of like geeky music production. Cool, fantastic. Have you downloaded Moog since from the? Oh, absolutely. Unfortunately, I didn't get to benefit from the freebies right now. Oh, let's address that real fast. And thank you again, Fade Man. For those of you who might not know, if you have an iPad, head over to the App Store and grab the Moog apps. They're all free right now. Moog, Modal D. There's a Moog filter effect as well, and I believe it's they're celebrating a birthday. So whether you pronounce it Moog, whether you pronounce it Moog, head on over to the App Store and grab those free plugins for your iPhone or your iPad because, hey, free is a pretty nice price. Thanks for bringing that up, Fade Man. Absolutely. All right, I think we are going to call it today, and I really appreciate everyone hanging out on this first, live stream with Ableton. I'm surprised that we got so much done. It went a little bit sideways at the beginning with the tempo and whatever, but I love just kind of rolling with things on these projects as well, because that's what we do, in real life. It's not always going to be where you have an idea in your mind and you sit down and you create that exact idea exactly as it was in your mind. I try to let things happen in the session as well. Cool. I'm just going to go ahead and play through this one more time, and hopefully I won't think of any, changes to make along the way, and then we're going to go ahead and call it for today. Thanks again for tuning in, everyone. Live stream and from starting from scratch, I would say that is absolutely not bad at all. Fantastic. All right. I hope some of you might have enjoyed this on some level, getting a first look at how I actually work inside of Ableton, pretty much keeping every single track in audio so that we can really get a good visual representation of what we're working with. I really like to just work in audio. I can chop and paste things as needed. I can repitch. I can reverse things. Yeah, fantastic. All right, everyone. Until next time, thanks for watching.